It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501, Refutation from Vienna. Once Bismarck's content was published, it shocked the whole of Europe. It seemed that the view of this very famous person in Europe became the mainstream of everyone. Of course, Spain seemed to become a clown in it, so the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs even summoned the Prussian ambassador to Spain to express dissatisfaction. The Netherlands even criticized Berlin's statement for this, and Chancellor Van said that he would not comment on Bismarck's approach because he thought it was not worth mentioning. Whether Huntington, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, will visit Spain and announce his support for Spain's ambition is not only closely watched by Britain, the Netherlands and Spain. With Bismarck's speech in the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of Prussia, it shows that the world is also highly concerned about whether Huntington can make the trip. People with discerning eyes can see that Bismarck seems to have the intention of belittling the Netherlands and Spain, but some people do not agree with this. This person is Archduke Rainer Ferdinand, the Prime Minister of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He seems to be competing with Bismarck and also delivered a Prime Minister's speech at the Vienna Parliament of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His views seem to be more biased towards the Netherlands. London's opposition to Huntington's visit to Spain has been gradually increasing. After the Spanish Vanguard reported the incident on the 9th, Britain began to express its firm opposition to Huntington's visit to Spain during his visit to Spain. It stressed that if the Dutch government did not stop his actions, it would seriously undermine Britain's sovereignty and territorial integrity. After the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke said on February 11 that the military thought it was inappropriate, the British official emphasized in an even more severe tone that if Huntington visited Spain and expressed support for Spain's claims, Britain would take necessary actions to counter it, and it would keep its word. London went further privately and warned the Thorbecke government through multiple channels that if Huntington's visit to Spain and his claims were not restrained, Britain would not rule out the use of force. However, many people seem to have forgotten that the Netherlands is like the United States of America and the United Kingdom, with a separation of powers. The Prime Minister cannot control the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the President of the Supreme Court. Obviously, Britain seems to have overlooked this point. Under the Dutch system of separation of powers, the cabinet government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Dutch Parliament are equal in status and are not subordinate to each other. This is why Thorbecke can only say the military thinks it is inappropriate but cannot say that he opposes it, because if Prime Minister Thorbecke interferes with Speaker Huntington's visit, it would be a violation of the Dutch constitution. Since the cabinet government and the legislative assembly are of equal status, Thorbecke can only respect the decision of Speaker Huntington. If Speaker Huntington decides to visit Spain and announces the purpose of the visit, Thorbecke, as the Prime Minister of the Cabinet, can only fully cooperate, and even need to send warships to escort him. If he goes by land, he needs to communicate with France. Of course, given the current tense relationship between the Netherlands and France, no one would think that he would pass through France. In any case, Thorbecke must cooperate with Huntington's visit, otherwise he would be derelict of duty under the Constitution. Secondly, Huntington has always been known for his firm opposition to Britain and France in the Dutch Parliament. He even wanted to keep his position for the internal election in the Netherlands. Therefore, he naturally hopes to visit Spain when he is in power to absorb the votes against Britain and France, and to complete his glorious qualifications wish as Speaker. This is also human nature. From the perspective of his personality traits of opposing Britain and France and supporting Spain in Northern Europe for more than 30 years as a Member of Parliament, it should be no surprise that Speaker Huntington has a strong desire to visit Spain and support Spain's position. In fact, 30 years ago in 184, when King William I abdicated the throne of the Netherlands to his son, King William II, Speaker Huntington, who was only a Member of Parliament at the time, asked King William II, who had just inherited the throne of the Netherlands, to show a different policy towards Britain from his father, King William I, because Britain had just sailed warships to the Dutch capital Amsterdam and the second largest city Rotterdam to bombard the coastal waters. Eventually, King William I was forced to agree to Belgium's independence as a kingdom in 1839. It was from 1839 that Huntington, as a Member of Parliament, formed an anti-British group in the Dutch Parliament and became the leader. Now 30 years have passed, and this anti-British group has pushed Huntington to the position of Speaker and has a huge influence in the Dutch House of Representatives. Therefore, the reason why unfriendly bills are passed from time to time in the Netherlands can be found. Huntington is no longer the weakling he was 30 years ago, and the Netherlands is even weaker than before. If London thinks that Britain can still crush the Netherlands and force them to suffer a big loss, it will face unexpected risks. Perhaps the Netherlands wants to challenge the British by using this matter, but it may have made the mistake of underestimating its opponent. From Amsterdam's point of view, the Dutch cabinet government is trying to organize Huntington's visit to Spain and restrict his political tendencies in a weak cooperation with Britain. Isn't it a self-admission of the Netherlands that it is inferior to the threat of Britain? Finally, Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain also reflects the differences in strategic thinking between Britain and the Netherlands. Amsterdam obviously believes that if the UK's organization of Huntington's visit to Spain is effective, it will not only represent the Netherlands' autonomy overwhelmed by Britain when challenging Britain in the Netherlands' foreign relations, but also show that Britain will be able to oppose any visit that the Netherlands believes should not be made by Britain in the future. If London successfully opposes Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain, the Netherlands will back off, which shows that the west wind overwhelms the east wind. From now on, the Netherlands may no longer have the capital to abuse the British Empire, and the Netherlands will no longer have the power to challenge Britain's status, and even be castrated for this. Once Prime Minister Thorbecke agrees to the UK's request and dissuades Speaker Huntington from visiting the Spanish-Gibraltar border, the Netherlands' voice on Spanish issues will gradually be marginalized or weakened. More importantly, once Prime Minister Thorbecke succumbs to the pressure from Britain during Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain, will the Netherlands' allies in the world still believe in the Dutch government's promises in the future? The Thorbecke government has repeatedly shown affection to Spain and repeatedly increased its efforts to maintain relations with Spain, which has triggered a great positive response in Spain. Once the Netherlands compromises with Britain, it means that the Dutch government headed by Thorbecke will immediately break its promise to support Spain against Britain and France, and no one in the world will believe in the Netherlands' promises anymore, and the Netherlands' global credit will also be completely bankrupt. Chapter 502. The Speaker of the House of Representatives may be riding a tiger when visiting the West. A heavyweight in the Dutch House of Representatives confirmed that the ruling Liberal Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington invited senior Dutch MPs from all factions to visit Spain together. Michael, the leader of the Christian faction of the Dutch House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee, confirmed on the afternoon of February 17 that the Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington invited several senior MPs to visit Spain together. Although he was from a different faction, he was also one of the invited members, but he has declined the invitation. This is the first time that a politician has confirmed by name that Huntington does have plans to visit Spain. Michael confirmed to the European Times on the afternoon of February 17 that he and Hanks, the director of the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee, were invited by the Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington. Michael said that he could not go to Spain with Huntington because he had a personal commitment to fulfill and it conflicted with a trip to Spain. The trip to Spain was scheduled to take place before the 20th, but Michael did not provide an exact date. Other newspapers are preparing to conduct exclusive interviews on this, but Michael's spokesman did not respond to the relevant reports. According to the European Times, Michael said in a brief interview in the House of Representatives, any MP who wants to go should go, which demonstrates political deterrence to the British-Israeli government. But Michael also believes that Speaker Huntington should pay attention to military issues that may escalate the situation. In addition, according to the European Times, Huntington's House of Representatives ally, fellow Liberal MP Akers, also confirmed to the European Times on the 17th that Huntington invited him to visit Spain, but he was unable to attend. One blow stirs up 1,000 waves. With the confirmation of these Dutch politicians, Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain has become difficult to turn back. Now it has reached the point where he has to go. Therefore, the development of the situation in the three countries of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain has attracted attention in Europe and even the world. Even other countries are gearing up, as if waiting to see the show. Herman van Rompuy, Dean of the School of Diplomacy at Leiden University, the oldest university in the Netherlands, and a special commentator for the European Times, the most influential newspaper in Europe, boldly commented on the visit in an exclusive interview with the European Times on February 17, 1869. He pointed out that the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke failed to persuade the Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington not to visit Spain, but instead aroused the backlash of the two factions of the Spanish Parliament, calling on the Netherlands to never succumb to British pressure. Therefore, the relevant departments of the Thorbecke government have begun to make necessary arrangements and deployments to cooperate with his visit to Spain. Huntington, 58 years old, who has served in the House of Representatives for more than 30 years, is known for his anti-British and pro-Dutch stance. He ranks second in the order of succession to the Dutch government, second only to the Senate President. With the midterm elections in November this year approaching, he naturally hopes to make more performances for himself and the Liberals to enrich the faction votes. Herman Van Rompuy said that the Netherlands and Britain have fought several times since the Spanish vanguard disclosed Huntington's plan to visit Spain on February 9, 1869. After Prime Minister Thorbecke said at the press conference that the military has opinions, the opposition voices in London have gradually increased. He said that in recent days, the British Empire has privately sent a message to the Netherlands through multiple channels. If Huntington visits Spain and speaks whatever he wants, the British Empire does not rule out the use of force. Herman van Perron pointed out that this includes warship escort and interception of visiting ships passing through the English Channel, or prohibition of landing on the Spanish coast. He said that the key point is that the high-profile opposition of the British Empire has also aroused a strong backlash from the Dutch Parliament, which has put Thorbecke in a dilemma. In addition, if the immigration is successful, he has to arrange an escort for Huntington's visit to Spain. If the British Empire's accompanying warships are rational and self-controlled, both sides may just go through the motions, which can be regarded as completing the mission, but without hurting the relationship. Naturally, this is the best. He was worried that the warships of both sides would not be so operational but emotional. For example, if the captains of the warships of either the Netherlands or the United Kingdom were not rational and self-controlled, the warships of the two sides would collide or even open fire, which might increase the tension between Britain and the Netherlands and even cause the conflict between the two countries to expand. If the British Empire prevailed in the conflict, the Netherlands would lose face, and the prestige and leadership of the Netherlands as a leading force in the Indian and Pacific Oceans and the international organizations established by the Netherlands would also be seriously damaged. However, if the Netherlands prevailed, the Prime Minister of the British Empire and others would also face the risk of impeachment, and their status would inevitably be affected. London might not do anything directly to the Netherlands for a while, but it would pick on the weak and vent its dissatisfaction on Spain, especially expanding the wave of Gibraltar construction that was previously afraid to expand due to Spain's emotions. Herman van Perron pointed out that the Netherlands is a country with separation of powers, and the executive and legislative branches are not subordinate to each other and have roughly equal status. As long as one of the speakers Huntington visits Spain, even if Thorbecke is the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, he can only respect and fulfill his duty of protection. The only person who can make Huntington change his mind is himself. If he decides to give up the visit to Spain, he must find a good reason, because in history, the Italian deputy speaker has also found reasons not to visit the sensitive area of Spain. If Speaker Huntington gives up the visit to Spain, perhaps the Anglo-Dutch-Spanish crisis can be avoided. Perhaps in a serious situation in London, Huntington, a stalwart of the Dutch House of Representatives who has been anti-British for 30 years, seems to find it difficult to give up. When Herman van Perron was asked how to resolve the current Anglo-Dutch crisis, Van Perron pointed out the crux of the problem. He said that the issue of the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives visiting Spain continues to burn, and there is even a sign of a storm coming. This trip is a big deal. If the Spanish opposition party can unite and suggest that the Spanish government and the ruling party politely refuse Huntington's visit, the crisis can be resolved immediately. First of all, if Spain politely refuses Huntington's visit, it will immediately help Prime Minister Thorbecke of the Netherlands. Prime Minister Thorbecke had expressed at the first time that this trip was not appropriate, but the voices of the Netherlands persuading him to go in were so strong that Prime Minister Thorbecke seemed unable to stop it and was caught in a dilemma, even similar to Italy's persuasion of the deputy speaker to withdraw in order to avoid the Anglo-Spanish-Italian crisis. The Dutch government agencies could not resist the pressure from the parliament. However, if Spain, which was weak, opposed this time, it would be equivalent to providing Thorbecke with the best solution, and even the best way for Speaker Huntington himself to step down. He should not lose the big picture for the sake of the small, which would ruin the communication between Thorbecke and Prime Minister Disraeli. Instead, It would increase Prime Minister Thorbecke's political bargaining chips. In this way, a small soldier would make a great contribution, and the Netherlands would definitely support Spain's position and interests more afterwards. For London, this can also relieve the alarm. Otherwise, it would be a lot of trouble, and even an accidental shooting would be difficult to deal with. Similarly, this can also be regarded as Spain's goodwill, and London will certainly understand it, and will relax its foreign policy towards Spain, and Gibraltar will be more cautious to prevent the Spanish people's emotions from rebounding again. Watching the situation in Spain, a polite refusal can avoid shocks and possible losses of the Spanish army. If the UK really starts to strengthen the construction of Gibraltar, the blockade and interception in the waters around Spain may cause the opponents of the Spanish ruling party to rise again, causing major internal instability, and the consequences are difficult to estimate. It is even more unknown how the relationship between Spain and the UK will deteriorate in the future. Herman van Perron pointed out that in the end, maintaining the relationship between Spain and the UK will help maintain a certain degree of economic dependence on the Netherlands and unilateral diplomatic rapprochement, and prevent going down the same path. The cabinet government led by Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez can reap the dividends, and the government will make a steady profit. It can be seen from this that Herman said that Spain is currently facing a major national security crisis. As long as the ruling and opposition forces work together and the Spanish government is willing to follow suit, it can turn danger into safety and even create many peace dividends for the UK, the Netherlands and Spain. It is worth thinking twice. It is similar to Herman van Perron's idea. In an exclusive interview with the Australian Times, Krim, director and chief researcher of the Australia Institute, also pointed out that Spain took the initiative to raise a question: can Spain take the initiative to refuse the visit of Speaker Huntington? He pointed out that in the case that neither Britain nor Spain can lower its tough stance, Spain's initiative to ask Huntington to change or postpone the trip is undoubtedly a relatively operational and flexible approach. He said that according to the Australian Times, Dutch Speaker Huntington plans to visit Spain and show support for Spanish territory. If it happens, it will be the greatest support for Spain and will be of great significance to Spain, but it will also inevitably receive a strong response from the UK, France and London. Under the current framework of the UK, the Netherlands and Spain, in order to avoid a situation of the three countries falling into crisis, can Madrid take the initiative to refuse Huntington's visit? Indeed, for Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez and the ruling party he leads, a very long visit will undoubtedly enhance their ruling capital. Now, politicians from Europe and other countries are very reluctant to touch the Gibraltar issue when they visit Spain. If the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives Huntington can make a visit and support Spain's public statement on the issue of Britain's reclaiming Gibraltar, the relationship between the Netherlands and Spain will be elevated to a higher level, which is very much expected for Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez, who was just ousted by the previous Prime Minister. This will also play an important role in promoting and assisting his faction in the upcoming midterm parliamentary elections in Spain. Therefore, it is obviously unrealistic to ask Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez and his faction to give up such an opportunity and actively reject Huntington's visit, especially considering that Huntington has long insisted on Spain's territorial claims. This seems to be unreasonable, but based on the potential dangers of the three countries of Britain, Spain and the Netherlands, such an approach may be a more appropriate way to ease the situation at the moment. Chapter 503, Can we actively refuse the visit of Speaker Huntington? Neither London nor Amsterdam can afford to be too weak at this special time. For London, Disraeli needs to face the competitive public opinion of former Prime Minister and old rival Claxton, as well as the battle for parliamentary seats between the Tories and Whigs in the near future. Therefore, the status of the British Empire has become his position that is not attacked. At the same time, since the Netherlands is obviously promoting the sausage-slicing strategy, constantly challenging London's position and influence in Gibraltar and the UK's global position, and even hollowing out the glorious deterrence of the British Empire. Therefore, as many British politicians have expressed, if Huntington makes this trip to express opposition to the legalization of British rule in Gibraltar, it is not impossible for Britain to respond with tough military means. As the message conveyed by Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke when he released it, the Dutch military believes that it is not the right time for Speaker Huntington to visit Spain and express his ideas. Obviously, the Dutch military department has received strong dissatisfaction from the British military, and there may even be a lot of threats. But Thorbecke obviously cannot stop Speaker Huntington's visit, at least on the surface. Based on the principle of separation of powers, the Thorbecke government cannot directly interfere with the visit of the Dutch personnel after the release of the DOS. Moreover, the Thorbecke government is unlikely to be too weak at this time, which will be a disaster for the successor within the faction of the Prime Minister Thorbecke, who values his support rate very much, after he leaves office, and this will give the Christian faction an opportunity to take advantage. That is, we can see that the relationship between the United Kingdom and the Netherlands is developing in an increasingly unfriendly direction from the previous Thorbecke and Viscount Palmerston period, to the current two countries becoming the investment, alliance and competition trichotomy evaluated by William IV, and then to the confrontation, alliance, competition trichotomy after British Prime Minister Disraeli came to power last year. It is obvious that the British government under Disraeli seems to realize the need to maintain appropriate competition with the Netherlands. Perhaps it will be beneficial to his governance and the operation of the British Empire's global governance and order. But often on the contrary, it seems that his choice should be wrong. The influence of the Netherlands seems to have expanded dramatically in the more than 1 year of his term. But the influence of the United Kingdom has shrunk. It is hard to believe that one is down and the other is up. In short, no matter what, Prime Minister Thorbecke cannot show any signs of weakness at this moment. It seems unrealistic to ask Thorbecke to stop Speaker Huntington's trip. It is impossible. Therefore, among the three parties of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain, the only one with relative flexibility is the cabinet government led by Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez of the Kingdom of Spain. Under the framework of the three parties of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain, Huntington's value to Spain is more symbolic. Whether Huntington visits or not, it may substantially change Spain's return of Gibraltar, especially under the pressure of Britain. It seems that Spain has not gained much substantial benefits, and it may even increase the pressure from Britain. Therefore, the value of Huntington's visit has been relatively reduced. How the Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez's government responds to Huntington's possible visit should not only consider the benefits, but also the costs. For the potential reaction of Britain, Madrid is not too paid and makes the greatest negative assessment. If Huntington organizes the Red Army to arrive in Spain, it will immediately improve Spain's access to Gibraltar or improve its international status with Spain. The answer is probably no. However, the troop may face further pressure from London, even the pressure of British warships' regular patrols around the waters of Spain. Now Britain seems to be slowly tightening the scope of patrols in the English Channel and the Western Mediterranean. If the scope is expanded because of this, it will not be a good thing for Spain. What will happen to the more serious military pressure in the future? Is Madrid prepared for this? What's more, Huntington may be asked to step down soon. Will his personal influence be reduced? Will Spain continue to support its policies towards the Netherlands? It is also unknown. As the weaker party among the three parties of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain, it is not easy to take the initiative in the three-party game. Only by taking advantage of the current dilemma of the other two parties of Britain and the Netherlands, can Spain have an opportunity, and now it is. Moreover, if what Spanish House Speaker Julian said is true, that is, Spain maintains rational goodwill towards Britain, then when the three parties of Britain, Spain and the Netherlands are about to enter a serious crisis and even the possibility of war, they should use the goodwill of Spain to reduce the risks among the three parties. When London and Amsterdam are silent about lowering their tough stance, Madrid's initiative to ask Dutch House Speaker Huntington to change or postpone the trip is undoubtedly a relatively maneuverable and flexible approach. Finally, Krim, director and chief researcher of the Australian Institute, who published this suggestion in the Australian Times, asked in return, will the Spanish authorities in Madrid do this? After the Spanish Vanguard reported that Huntington, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, planned to visit Spain and express support for Spain's sovereignty over Gibraltar, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke, Spanish Chief of Staff Mark Rutte, Dutch Foreign Minister Huspert van and other Dutch political representatives expressed their opposition. Huntington did not comment on the question. Public opinion from all sides was concerned about whether Huntington would return and what kind of military prevention and control measures London would take. In response, when everyone was paying attention, Huntington finally stood up on the morning of February 18 and said, I think Prime Minister Thorbecke and Chief of Staff General Mark Rutte meant that the Dutch military was worried that the Dutch warships escorting me would be intercepted or even sunk, or that other unfriendly actions would come from the British Navy. This aspect revealed that the Dutch military believed that the British Navy might shoot down the warships escorting Huntington, which would trigger a major military crisis. At the same time, this also shows that the Netherlands has prepared a complete plan to deal with the threat of possible attacks from the British Navy on the visits of Dutch senior officials. On February 17, the Financial Times also reported from several British sources that the British Empire had issued an unusually severe warning to the Netherlands and would not rule out the possibility of a military response. For a time, the sky in Europe seemed to be overcast. If the above information shows that the three parties of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain are facing a thunderstorm, then the statement made by the British Foreign Secretary Russell directly proves the seriousness of the situation. At the press conference on the morning of February 18, 1869, a reporter asked the Spanish Vanguard's report, which kind of military response would the British Empire make if it could? Foreign Secretary Russell said that Britain has recently repeatedly expressed to the Dutch government its serious concerns and stern position of firmly opposing Huntington's adventurous behavior on the Gibraltar issue. We are on high alert. If the Kingdom of the Netherlands insists on its own way, Britain will take visible and tangible measures to defend the interests of the British Empire in the world and protect Britain's prestige and vital interests. All the consequences caused by this should be borne by the Netherlands. When asked, the British Empire reportedly issued a harsher warning to Dutch officials. Is that true? Foreign Secretary Russell said, "Your understanding is quite correct," sending a major signal that the British Empire did issue a harsher warning than ever before. But will the Netherlands surrender? The answer is also difficult to come by. The four Anglo-Dutch naval battles in the 16th and 17th centuries established Britain's supremacy in the North Atlantic, replacing the Netherlands, and consolidated its foundation for confronting Spain. After that, Britain slowly eroded Spain's position in the Atlantic to the south, and finally the Anglo-Spanish naval battle established Britain's supremacy at sea. To understand what measures Britain will take after Huntington visits Spain and issues a harsher warning than ever before, we need to understand how well the two countries have competed in the past. Due to the lack of strength, the Netherlands was driven out of New York in North America by Britain. Due to the lack of strength, the Netherlands was replaced by Britain in the colony of South Africa. Due to the lack of strength, Britain forcibly occupied Malacca, later Singapore, and the Dutch protest was ineffective. Due to the lack of strength, Britain threatened the Netherlands not to establish colonies on the Malay Peninsula or sign any treaties with local rulers, otherwise Britain would occupy Sumatra, the westernmost island of the Dutch East Indies. Due to the lack of strength, under the threat of Britain, Belgium eventually broke away from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands with the help of Britain and became an independent country, and the king was Leopold I, the uncle of Queen Victoria who had just ascended the throne of the British king. The latter practice of Britain bullying the Netherlands with strength only happened 30 years ago, and many Dutch people still clearly remember how Britain drove its fleet to practice artillery fire off the coast of the Netherlands, and the crisis caused ultimately ended with the failure and compromise of the Netherlands. In the past, the Netherlands lacked strength, especially in military terms, as it could not match the British naval technology. As a result, the Netherlands could only suffer in silence and swallow the bitter fruit. Therefore, avoiding conflicts and frictions once occupied the main line of Dutch foreign policy of the three Nassau Orange kings, William I, and William II, now the King of Greece. If Huntington still visits Spain this time in the face of Britain's resolute dissatisfaction, even if he knows that the British Empire is ready for a military conflict with the Netherlands, it seems that he has not given up and is unwilling to compromise, at least for now, which is surprising. Chapter 504, Telegraph Communication, Britain finally compromised. Kingdom of the Netherlands, Amsterdam, in the private office of King William IV in the Royal Palace of the Netherlands. There was no one around King William IV except him, and outside the door were Bill Charley, director of the Royal Netherlands Intelligence Agency, and Mackay Sean, director of International Intelligence of the Netherlands. At this moment, King William IV had a very wonderful expression on his face, but his eyes were fixed on the letter in his hand. Obviously, his expression was driven by the content of the letter in his hand. What was written on this envelope that made him show such a vivid expression? At this point, the stereotype that the Kingdom of the Netherlands dared not to go to war with the British Empire and would not easily go to war with the British Empire will inevitably be broken. On the one hand, the strength of the Netherlands is growing stronger, and on the other hand, the hegemonic influence of the British Empire is increasingly diluted with the rise of the Netherlands, Prussia, and the United States of America. Many people actually understand this, but there is not much clear impact. If Huntington's visit to Spain is successful and the British actions are thunder and thunder but rain, it will become a kind of evidence of the strength and influence of the United Kingdom. This seems to be the reason for the toughness of the Netherlands, and it seems that the international community is also carefully observing the reaction of the United Kingdom. This trend cannot be intensified. London has reached the point where it must take measures. Any accidental firing between the three countries of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain may trigger a war. If no preparations are made for the worst, no party can act rashly. But the Netherlands seem to be unconvinced. Amsterdam did not hesitate to cover up Huntington's visit with an excuse of turning a blind eye, and even did not care much about Britain's interception and sinking. This indirectly confirmed a problem, that is, the Netherlands can send troops to protect its own interests at any time. No matter where the opponent comes from, the Dutch naval fleet has been ready and can be launched at any time. There is no sensitive time point for the Kingdom of the Netherlands, nor is there any saying that it is not appropriate to use force during its rise, and there is no fear of all parties discussing the Netherlands' small-scale investment. At this point, it is obvious that the Netherlands has already considered itself a great power and should have the strength of a great power. Although few people in Europe believe that the Netherlands, which has only 3 million people in Europe, can take on this position, at least they do not think that the Netherlands can confront Britain in Europe, but the Netherlands' approach and the outside world's approach will obviously not become a constraint. It seems that the whole of Europe, including London, has discovered that Amsterdam's unprecedented bold approach shows that the Netherlands dare not conflict with the British Empire. It is a thing of the past? William Iv's letter, but in his mind, he seemed to see a young and beautiful girl who was talking freely but maintained a solemn and noble face, and he couldn't help but sigh. If she were a man, perhaps Europe would have a different pattern. At least I want to use Britain as a stepping stone to help the Netherlands become a great power. It seems that there will be more twists and turns. William Iv murmured, in a few months, she will be a member of the Nassau family. She can be considered one of our own, although she is a woman, and a woman with great ambitions. William Iv, who was a little afraid, thought of many things. He was worried about whether his brother could subdue the other party. Looking at the letter in his hand, he thought of his brother, the current Greek Crown Prince Frederick, who was a little timid, and shook his head. Fortunately, my father William II is still alive, and according to history, my chief father William II will live in the position of king until 1890, which means he still has 20 years to live. In the history of the previous life, his predecessor William Hendrik, as the first heir to the throne of the Netherlands, lived from 1840 to 1879. The second brother William Carroll was from 1843 to 1850. The third brother William Frederick was from 1851 to 1884. He inherited the throne of the Netherlands after his predecessor's death, but unfortunately he lived shorter than his father, William III. After his mother, the Queen of the Netherlands, died in 1878, William III married Princess Emma of a small principality in the German Empire in 1879 and gave birth to Wilhelmina in 1880. Yes, it was the Queen Wilhelmina in his previous life who became the Queen of the Netherlands at the age of 10 in 1890 after her father and brothers died, and served as Queen for 58 years. Thinking of this, William Iv couldn't help but change his mind. Now I have successfully inherited the position of King of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is currently firmly in my hands, and I have medical examinations from time to time, and there is nothing wrong with my body. The strangest thing is that after his mother died in 1878, his predecessor died inexplicably in the following year in 1879, and his third brother Frederick also died 5 years later in 1884. In the end, Wilhelmina was the only one left, and she was pushed to the position of King of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Although there is no evidence of any conspiracy, I believe that those who are familiar with court fighting in the future will not think that this is a matter of course. In just 5 years, the Queen and her 2 legitimate sons died. William Iv thought grimly, looking around the Netherlands, only Britain and Germany have such capabilities. Judging from the fact that my stepfather William II married a princess of a small German principality as his second wife in 1879, he had already been infiltrated by Bismarck, William I and others at that time, and he did not dare to resist even after his wife and 2 legitimate sons were killed. The only thing to blame is that the geographical location of the Netherlands is too important, and it has become a territory fought over by the military strategists of Britain, France and Germany. especially the coast and excellent ports there, which are very tempting for Germany. Britain always tries to balance the balance of power in Europe to maintain its hegemony. France tries to smooth things over to maintain its status as a great power. Prussia or the future Germany has evil ambitions. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is gradually declining. The Russian Empire is slowly renewing itself in its last gasp. Italy is pretending to be resurrected. Spain was revived first but has no follow-up. Portugal is gradually declining. The United States of America is rising like a rainbow. Ottoman Turkey is falling apart. Where is the future of my Netherlands? William IV was about to fold the letter when his face suddenly changed slightly. He looked at the state of the letter after it was returned to the garden path with a strange expression. He did not look down just now, and did not notice that there was an oval-like pattern on the other side of the folded rectangle. The reason why William IV looked strange was that this pattern was actually a lip print, and it was smeared with lipstick. William IV did not know why, but suddenly thought of the girl who wrote the handwriting. William IV naturally understood what this lip print meant. Suddenly, he thought of the scene of him and her alone at the European Royal Family Dating Conference in 1862. The little girl was only 15 years old at that time. She was born in 1847 and is now 22 years old. Thinking that she will marry her brother Frederick in a few months and become the crown princess of Greece, his heart was throbbing. Thinking of the monthly correspondence between her and him over the years, even people with short emotional intelligence can understand what the British Queen Victoria's Princess Louise means. Maybe she is ambitious on one side, but maybe she really has some feelings for me. But when he thought that she would soon be his sister-in-law, William IV didn't know why, and a trace of sadness came over his heart. He shook his head and locked the letter in one of the innermost safes. This secret would be the biggest one for him at present, at least in his opinion at present. But Princess Louise's current relationship with him may help to further influence Greece in the future. After putting this aside, William IV thought of the recent visit of the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington to Spain, which had caused a lot of trouble in the three countries of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain. He couldn't help but show his pride. Using any illusion from later generations on the current Western rogue country, the British Empire, can be regarded as revenge for his motherland. He felt a little happier in his heart. However, this is not enough. The current situation has gone along the road he set. What remains is to continue to move forward and let the Netherlands enter the eyes of the people of the whole world with a strong image for the first time, so that everyone knows that the Netherlands cannot be bullied, even by the British Empire, the strongest country in the world today. On the contrary, the Netherlands can still pull out a few tiger whiskers from Britain. On the afternoon of February 18, 1869, when the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the British Empire were in a state of high tension because of the visit of the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington to Spain to support Spain's sovereignty over Gibraltar, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Thorbecke, and the Prime Minister of the British Empire, Disraeli, communicated by telegram on this issue and other topics to ease the rapidly intensified contradictions between the two countries. According to the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister Thorbecke and Prime Minister Disraeli each sent 10 telegrams to communicate, and said that the telegram communication involved exchanges on the British-Dutch issue in North America, the war between France and the Kingdom of Siam on the Malay Peninsula in the Far East, the African colonial issue, and the situation in the Balkan Peninsula. The two also had a frank and direct communication on the current international concern that the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives, Huntington, might have made a bombastic statement in support of Spain's Gibraltar. In London, 10 Downing Street announced that Prime Minister Disraeli focused on the UK's principled position on the Gibraltar issue, emphasizing firm opposition to Spain's ambition to claim Gibraltar, and opposed other countries' support for Spain's unrealistic fantasies, and that Britain would not make any compromise on this issue. Although this telegram communication is unlikely to bring about actual improvements to the UK and the Netherlands, many people believe that the first communication between the two after Disraeli took office as British Prime Minister will help avoid unnecessary conflicts. Analysts believe that the British Empire is currently recovering from the South African War, the North American War, and the Balkan War, which have caused heavy losses to the British Army, which has almost lost half of its army. Therefore, Disraeli's cabinet government does not want Britain to upgrade its position with the two major naval powers, Spain and the Netherlands. After all, the combined naval tonnage of the two countries has exceeded the total tonnage of Britain, and the loss of the army may cause the Netherlands and Spain, which have strong navies, to land on the British mainland in the south and north. Although it is a bit exaggerated, it is indeed a risk for Britain. And don't forget that in addition to the Netherlands and Spain, which barely made it to the ranks of first-class countries, the other countries that can almost rival Britain, such as France, Prussia, Tsarist Russia, and Austria-Hungary, are still eyeing them. Therefore, this is also the reason why London is hesitant. Chapter 505. Why did the British Empire not dare to take action? Prussia, Berlin. Bismarck frowned and pondered. In front of him was a pile of newspapers, some from Spain, some from the Netherlands, and some from Britain, and some from Prussia. As a diplomat, he knew French and Spanish before he was the ambassador to France, not to mention Russian, English and Dutch. Therefore, he was familiar with European languages, so reading the reports from major newspapers in various countries that he had collected was one of his greatest pleasures. While the outside world was speculating whether the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives Huntington would visit Spain, the telegram dialogue between the Prime Ministers of Britain and the Netherlands was carried out as scheduled. The communication between Disraeli and Thorbecke, which lasted for 10 telegrams, focused on international and bilateral issues. Although both sides still remained at their own statements, it can be imagined that Disraeli and Thorbecke should have in-depth communication on Huntington's visit to Spain. If Speaker Huntington insisted on visiting Spain, the trip might end in a low-key manner. Bismarck was very interested in the Gibraltar dispute between Britain, the Netherlands and Spain. He was not interested in Gibraltar itself, but in the incident. He could not help but mutter, the Netherlands actually made such a counterattack, putting Britain in a passive position, and the Spanish government cannot refuse. If it refuses, the ruling Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez will almost certainly fall. In this way, it seems that the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives is deliberately provoking public opinion to gain political popularity by taking advantage of the fact that the Dutch and the Spanish are anti-British. In fact, behind the scenes, he may have other intentions. No matter how you look at it, it seems that he is cooperating with the Dutch foreign policy. Bismarck suddenly thought so. It seemed that the Netherlands was really pushing the situation to develop in this way. If that's the case, then it makes sense. In fact, as early as when the Spanish vanguard reported the news of Huntington's visit to Spain, the Dutch administrative system and military had expressed their attitude very cleverly, especially Prime Minister Thorbecke's words not suitable and not welcome. The Foreign Minister Husbert von, whom Thorbecke relied on, strongly opposed it, and Thorbecke himself accidentally mentioned the role of the military. Whether it was a slip of the tongue or intentional, it no longer mattered. The Dutch military's meaning was very clear. If Speaker Huntington insisted on going to Spain, then the military would have to assist in maintaining security in accordance with the Constitution and in accordance with its statutory duties. Bismarck looked at the reports in these newspapers and became more and more certain of his idea that everything was developed under the cooperation of various departments in the Netherlands. Perhaps the Netherlands had a complete plan for the incident. Thinking of this, he was slightly stunned. If that was the case, what exactly did the Netherlands want to do? What was it for? From the internal tug-of-war in the Netherlands in the early stage, we can basically reveal the most real position of the military represented by the Thorbecke cabinet government-in-chief of General Staff Mark Rutte. First, they deeply realize that Gibraltar will be the biggest conflict point between Britain and Spain, and they know very well where Britain may have drawn a red line, so Thorbecke and others raised doubts and objections to Huntington. Second, they fully understand that Huntington's visit to Spain and his support for the West on the Gibraltar issue will have an impact on the Dutch government's policy stance toward Britain, so the Thorbecke cabinet government repeatedly reiterated that the Dutch government does not support Huntington's remarks on Gibraltar. Third, the Thorbecke government fully respects Huntington's rights as Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives under the Dutch constitutional framework. Although it will not obstruct him, it will not endorse him either. According to the settings just now, Bismarck came to the conclusion. Against the above background, Thorbecke should have expressed his position and concerns to Prime Minister Disraeli in London through this communication. Disraeli expressed Britain's dissatisfaction, which seemed to foreshadow 2 points. First, London must take strong countermeasures against Huntington's visit to Spain. Second, Huntington will bear the greatest responsibility if he insists on visiting Spain. Obviously, compared with a friendly dialogue between the British and Dutch Prime Ministers during the period when Viscount Palmerston was Prime Minister, Britain and the Netherlands in the Disraeli period have abandoned gentlemen exchanges and turned them into direct and rough collisions. Bismarck thought, London's questioning and warnings about Huntington's provocation on the Gibraltar issue are more directly aimed at the Thorbecke government. In this telegram communication, London's tone of accusation against the Thorbecke government's words and deeds on Gibraltar was not so tough. It should be understood by the Thorbecke government in the situation of Huntington's visit to Spain. As one of the Dutch anti-British political leaders whose term is about to expire and who seeks to continue to hold the position, Huntington's visit to Spain is almost imminent and must be carried out. But what is intriguing is that when the itinerary of the visit to Spain was exposed, Huntington responded to the media and stated that he supports Spain, but does not support Spain's provocation against Britain in order to seize Gibraltar. This position is actually consistent with the Dutch government. Therefore, Huntington, who has an extremely flamboyant political personality, is believed to be more restrained in his words and deeds during his visit to Spain. After the telegram communication between Thorbecke and Disraeli, Bismarck speculated that there might be three situations when Huntington visited Spain. The first is to skim the surface and start a visit. The venue may be limited to the Spanish capital Madrid, and the stay time may even be very short. The second is a closed-door visit that will not be announced to the public, and it will inevitably reiterate the position of supporting Spain but not supporting Spain's provocation against Britain in front of the Spanish government officials. Third, the Thorbecke government will reiterate the existing Dutch policy, that is, to support Spain's claims, but not to oppose Britain's control. Bismarck thought about it and laughed to himself. In this case, it will be worth paying attention to how London responds and retaliates. While Huntington is in Spain, will London's warships stay close to Spain's Atlantic and Mediterranean coastlines? Or will they formally sanction Huntington himself, his family, and the team members visiting Spain? The answer will be revealed soon. Whether the Netherlands is setting up a trap or not, this is an opportunity for Prussia. If Prussia can take advantage of the chaos to gain more benefits, it might as well do something extraordinary. Bismarck paused. The French Empire ruled by Napoleon III is still bleeding for the Far East. The more it bleeds, the lighter the burden will be on Prussia's future attack on France. Therefore, the current practice of the Netherlands pushing the Hague National Court to sanction the French Empire can continue, but it cannot be too heavy. If it is too heavy, it will hurt Napoleon III and finally choose to compromise. In that way, France will stop its practices in the Far East. Even with the French shrewdness, it may be able to repair its relations with various countries in the short term. By then, Prussia will face a powerful France, not to mention the neighboring countries that have eased relations with France. They may support France to oppose Prussia. Bismarck took a deep breath. Therefore, Prussia's joining in the sanctions against the French Empire will be counterproductive. Instead, it will become an excuse for the French Olivier government to put down its face and kneel down and beg for mercy. Britain and the Austro-Hungarian Empire probably think so too. After all, everyone wants to weaken their competitors. Therefore, the Netherlands' sanctions on France should not be expanded. They need to be slow and warm. Bismarck's idea was certain, but it had a significant impact on the future situation in Europe. What many people in Paris absolutely don't know is that the high-level governments in Berlin, London, and Vienna did not sanction them because they thought they disagreed with the Dutch's anti-French factors. They never thought that the most important reason was that the frog was boiled in warm water. If they knew, they would definitely not be as calm as they are now. Brown, chief researcher and director of the British project at the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, wrote in the influential European magazine Global Diplomacy in Belgium on February 18 that British Prime Minister Disraeli did not want to be involved in a conflict that would distract his attention or affect his situation in the domestic political struggle with his old rival, Whig leader Claxton. Winning the Tory and Whig parliamentary elections in the near future is his top priority now. He believes that if Huntington visits Spain and makes anti-British remarks about Gibraltar, Britain should take military action, but it is unlikely that London will use this opportunity to attack Madrid or Amsterdam. At least before the results of the midterm parliamentary elections before the end of this year come out, London will put stability first. The Luxembourg-based newspaper Europe Times quoted a person familiar with the telegram communication arrangements between Thorbecke and Disraeli as saying that the Thorbecke government believed that the contact between the prime ministers was the best way to ease the tension between the two countries on this issue. Thorbecke also hoped to discuss with Disraeli more other international issues, as well as the issue of cooperation between Britain and the Netherlands to maintain safe navigation in the Strait of Malacca between Malay Island and the Dutch East Indies in the event of France launching a war in the Far East. At the same time, The Netherlands also expected Britain to support the punishment of France for launching a war against the Kingdom of Siam. However, the outside world is not optimistic that this communication will bring substantial improvement to Anglo-Dutch relations, but the contact between the British and Dutch prime ministers at this time is expected to reduce the risk of an uncontrollable crisis. Tim, director of the Netherlands governance project at the Dutch think tank Rotterdam National Peace Foundation, hopes that the two sides can establish a mechanism to reduce the risk of accidents. He said, Dutch-British relations are in such a bad state and mutual distrust has reached an all-time high. I don't think people realize how dangerous this moment is. However, Professor Mist, an expert on the British Empire project at the Netherlands Centre for Strategic and International Studies, and currently a faculty member at the Royal Netherlands Academy of Political Science, believes that the two sides are not on the brink of danger, but the risk of a major crisis is higher than zero. Therefore, the telegram communication between Prime Minister Thorbecke and Prime Minister Disraeli is important for avoiding unnecessary conflicts. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 516 Battleship Escort? French Empire, Paris. Napoleon III is listening to reports from Prime Minister Olivier and Foreign Minister Edmond Drouin-Delou. Foreign Minister Edmond Drouin-Delou said with a serious face, the Paris Institute of International Affairs, a Paris think tank established by President Locke of the University of Paris, which was modeled after relevant Dutch institutions, believes that due to the threat from London, if the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives Huntington really visits Spain, he will be escorted by the Dutch naval fleet and directly escorted to the port of Gijón in the Bay of Biscay on the Atlantic Ocean at the junction with France to ensure that no dangerous accidents occur. Napoleon III asked, so, Huntington is really prepared to visit Spain despite the opposition of the British Empire? Yes, Edmond Drouin-Delou followed, according to the information, I absolutely do not think that Huntington's visit to Spain will provoke a crisis of war between Britain and the Netherlands, and I think he should go. At the same time, I think that Huntington's failure to visit Spain and his retreat in the face of London's obvious coercion and intimidation will cost him the wrong message at the wrong time. Therefore, I do not think Huntington will give in. Also, Speaker Huntington was supposed to go a few years ago, but he cancelled it due to the suppression of Prime Minister Thorbecke. This time, as the midterm election is approaching and the Netherlands' strength has greatly increased, they insisted on taking action. London's strong reaction at this time is because London saw opportunities from the Netherlands Ministry of Defence, the Prime Minister's office, and other administrative departments of the Netherlands cabinet government. These institutions have sent out the signal that coercion is useful, so London is currently raising its voice, but I don't think London will really take offensive actions. Instead, I think London is bluffing. Napoleon III nodded. He looked at the silent Prime Minister Olivier next to him and asked, what do you think, Prime Minister? Olivier seemed prepared and said, I have also analyzed the current tensions between the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. It is not on the interests of the British Empire to provoke a crisis or conflict with the Netherlands. If the British Navy attacks the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, there will be a war between Britain and the Netherlands. Olivier said, I don't think London is crazy enough to want to go to war with the Netherlands. Napoleon III asked with interest, should the Dutch Ministry of Defence still remain prepared? Of course, Olivier replied. I think the ideal situation is that Huntington returns to Spain and he will be escorted, because of the threat issued by the UK, just as the Foreign Secretary just mentioned, the Paris think tank, the Institute of International Affairs of the University of Paris, believes that. I also agree that as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Netherlands will at least send a large fleet to escort him, Olivier speculated. The Netherlands does not have a very friendly relationship with the French Empire, and its relationship with the United Kingdom is similar. Therefore, a large fleet can make people feel more at ease, and it can also establish the prestige of the French Empire, so as to ensure that no dangerous accidents occur. Napoleon III asked, what is the attitude of the British side? Foreign Secretary Edmond Drouin-Delou replied at this time, the London Times, the mouthpiece of the ruling Tory party in the UK, has published an article stating that if Huntington visits Spain and makes unfavorable remarks about British-ruled Gibraltar, The British Navy can send troops to intercept Huntington when he returns, and can also send the British Home Fleet to suppress and support. The newspaper analyzed the possible routes of Huntington's interviews, whether it is from the English Channel directly to the Bay of Biscay, or from visiting Lisbon, Portugal and then returning to Spain. These two options will be in the Atlantic Ocean, which provides the possibility for the British Navy to intercept and escort. Napoleon III asked with some interest, in this case, what about the tension between Anglo-Dutch relations? This time Prime Minister Olivier replied, according to our sources in London, many people in London are very dissatisfied. If Huntington visits Spain and provokes Gibraltar, London believes that this will constitute a major incident in Anglo-Dutch relations. London must be prepared for a full showdown. Many people in London also hope that the British Navy will make a maritime hegemony, which is in line with the identity and image of the British Empire. With this great escort, accompany Huntington to visit Spain. British Foreign Minister Russell said about Huntington's visit that if the Netherlands insists on its own way, all consequences will be borne by the Netherlands. Russell also said that London has recently expressed to the Dutch government in Amsterdam its serious concern and solemn position that it firmly opposes Huntington's interference in Gibraltar. Olivier said, however, Mark Rutte, Chief of Staff of the Dutch Ministry of Defense, said that he had personally talked to Speaker Huntington and provided him with the Security Bureau's assessment. In addition, sources said that Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke also met with Huntington behind the scenes to explain the potential risks of the visit. According to information sent back by our insiders in Amsterdam, the Dutch Ministry of Defense briefed Huntington yesterday, explaining the attitudes of Britain and Spain, and the possibility that Gibraltar could cause tensions between Britain and Spain. Finally, Olivier pointed out, Your Majesty, the Dutch Speaker Huntington's visit seems to have been shaped by the Dutch government as a matter of national security, but the Dutch government seems to have let it go, saying that only he can decide his own itinerary, starting today to visit Portugal, Italy, Greece, and of course Spain. I don't know if he will go to the rumored Spanish side of Gibraltar to make pro-Spanish remarks. So it seems that the current situation is not too dangerous? Napoleon III asked disappointedly. At present, it seems that the Netherlands has no intention of turning against Britain directly, said Edmund Drouin-Delou. However, the Netherlands does not seem willing to bow to Britain easily, so there was the telegram communication between Thorbecke and Prime Minister Disraeli. So I guess this may be an opportunity for the Netherlands to ask for benefits from Britain, and this opportunity was created by the Netherlands itself. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. The Netherlands was able to use Gibraltar as a breakthrough feature to create the possibility of a confrontation between Britain and Spain, in order to profit for the Netherlands. Why didn't the French Empire think of this approach before? If the Netherlands did the same, the French Empire would not have fallen back and turned against Spain like it is now, as if they had become enemies. Napoleon III's face also changed greatly. He regretted it. In order not to anger Britain, when Spain repeatedly asked France to support their claim to Gibraltar, the French high-level officials represented by him avoided the topic, which eventually angered Isabelle II. He turned from pro-French to anti-French, causing France to lose a loyal, reliable and powerful ally. If he could have done it, he would definitely support Spain despite the anger of Britain. Unfortunately, it seems too late now. Just as he was thinking this, there was a knock at the door. Several people frowned and looked at the door. High-level meetings are generally not interrupted. Napoleon III's chief guard could not have been unaware of this. In this case, it is obvious that he was interrupted because of an emergency. Napoleon III shouted to the door, "Come in." The chief guard came in nervously, walked quickly to Napoleon III, and whispered in a low voice. The two people next to him were a little curious. After a long time, Napoleon III met the two people's doubts. His face was more solemn than ever before and he said, "The analysis of Locke, president of the University of Paris, is correct. The Dutch Ministry of Defense has announced that the Netherlands has decided to mobilize warships to protect the safety of Speaker Huntington during his visit to various countries, including the steam battleship Rotterdam." After Napoleon III finished speaking, Olivier and Foreign Minister Edmund Drouin-Delou were shocked. They actually dispatched a steam battleship? Just as Olivier, Foreign Minister Edmund Drouin-Delou and Napoleon III were shocked by the Dutch big hand, they were also shocked by the fact that the Netherlands even dispatched the battleship Rotterdam. You should know that the steam battleship is currently the most advanced maritime weapon in the world. The Netherlands' use of it means that the Netherlands will not easily compromise with this so-called escort threat from the United Kingdom, which reflects that the Netherlands will not let its speaker become a threat target for others. Dutch Speaker of the House Huntington is about to go on a trip to southern Europe, especially the visit to Spain, which has escalated military risks. The Dutch Ministry of Defense announced on the afternoon of February 18, 1869 that the Dutch Ministry of Defense is developing countermeasures and will use the Rotterdam steam battleship to protect the safety of Speaker Huntington's visit if necessary. It is revealed that this security plan formulated by Aquila, commander of the Southern Fleet of the Dutch Home Fleet, must first be approved by the Chief of the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense, Mark Rutte, and will also be reported to Prime Minister Thorbecke. The announcement at this time indicates that it has been approved by both people and will be announced only after the agreement. A senior official of the Dutch Ministry of Defense told the European Times, as expected, whenever a Dutch official goes out on a visit, we will study how to ensure the safety of this official. This is very important and it is the responsibility of our Ministry of Defense. No one will think this is unreasonable. It is understood that the Dutch government has begun to greet Spain in advance, and their warships will also provide protection for the visiting countries. In addition, the Dutch Ministry of Defense is also planning policies to ensure the safety of the Speaker of the House of Representatives if there is an accidental shooting at sea. According to an insider disclosed in the European Times, Huntington plans to visit Spain in the next few days as part of his Southern European tour, and has invited Dutch liberal and Christian lawmakers to join him. The newspaper pointed out that if Huntington really visits Spain and expresses dissatisfaction with Britain, he will become the first senior European official outside of Europe to intervene in the dispute between Spain and Britain over Gibraltar. Chapter 507 Changes in the Middle East. While the Dutch speaker Huntington was visiting Spain and expressing his views on Gibraltar's intentions, a piece of news in the French newspaper Le Figaro surprised Europe and the world. It turned out that the Russian Empire had been making frequent moves in recent months, apparently taking advantage of the fact that the British Empire and the Netherlands were busy dealing with the French Empire in the Siamese War in the Far East, and the British, Dutch and Spanish themselves were in a dispute over Gibraltar, to get rid of the difficulties caused by the Balkan Peninsula War. In diplomacy, the Russian Empire rarely expressed its intention to improve relations with its old enemy, the Ottoman Empire, and considered reopening its embassy. It also applied to join the International Hague Court as a member state. In addition, it has obtained the consent of the Netherlands, Sweden and Denmark to become an observer state of the Nordic Alliance. On January 20, the Russian Empire's Foreign Minister and Prime Minister Gorchakov took the initiative to visit Constantinople to show goodwill. He said in Constantinople that the Russian Empire was willing to reopen its embassies in the capitals of the two countries. The two Black Sea rivals began negotiations last year to seek to improve bilateral relations. Officials of the Russian Empire said in early February that the Russian Empire had formally applied to join the ranks of the International Hague Court organization led by the Netherlands. The Netherlands has been influential and powerful in recent years, and the weight of the International Hague Court organization has also been enhanced with the increasing number of members. At present, the organization covers most countries in Europe and the world. Except for major powers such as Britain, France, Russian Empire, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, and Prussia, it has almost taken over the remaining countries, and its strength is strong. Among them, as one of the most powerful countries in the organization, the Netherlands has a small population, but its military and economic strength are second to none. At the same time, Prince Abdul Vasily, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, also visited St. Petersburg on February 5, and his intention to win over and get close to the Russian Empire was very strong. Some analysts pointed out that the Russian Empire was sanctioned by Britain and France because of the war it had launched in the Balkan Peninsula. When Britain was in the current diplomatic dilemma, the French Empire was too busy with the war in the Far East and had no time to take care of other things without making a breakthrough. The Russian Empire naturally sought to expand and deepen its relations with the Ottoman Empire and pull the current enemies of Britain and France to its side to compete with them. On the issue of the Eastern Mediterranean, which is of concern to Britain and France, the Russian Empire knew that the interests of various countries there would not be easily compromised, especially when they would not give in. At this time, the Russian Empire intervened and supported the Ottoman Empire's claims, which obviously won the appreciation of the Ottoman Empire. Prince Abdul Wasi, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, said that he felt that the several rounds of negotiations with the Russian Empire were positive, and the Ottoman Empire should seriously strive to reach a solid and lasting agreement to find the best way out for peace between the two countries. Jafari, an expert on international affairs of the Ottoman Empire, said that the failure of the British Empire to respond to the Ottoman Empire's demands for power and economic interests was the reason why the previous negotiations supported by Britain could not be resolved. Therefore, the Ottoman Empire currently chose to hold bilateral negotiations with the Russian Empire alone. He said that over the past many years, Britain's influence on the Ottoman Empire has increased as the Ottoman Empire has not benefited from the relationship, which has made Constantinople realize that Britain just likes to make a profit, rather than allowing the Ottoman Empire to benefit and grow. Therefore, the Ottoman Empire was somewhat unsure of the sincerity of the British Empire, and the current willingness of the Russian Empire to improve relations gave the Ottoman Empire an opportunity. However, many people pointed out that the Ottoman Empire's wavering position on the negotiations between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire led to the stagnation of the Russian-Austrian negotiations that began last year. Bob, an intelligence analyst for the French newspaper Le Figaro, said that within the Ottoman Empire, King Abdulaziz I Sultan's position on the negotiations was repeated. He pointed out that Sultan Abdulaziz I originally allowed the resumption of negotiations with the Russian Empire last year. Later, due to Britain's friendly outreach to the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire were close to reaching an agreement at that time. Perhaps it was Britain's show of goodwill that made King Abdulaziz I Sultan change his mind at this time. Sultan Abdulaziz I judged that the international situation would change, new cracks appeared in the world's military and politics, and internal strife suddenly broke out in Western European countries, which might give the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire a chance to gain the upper hand. So the Ottoman Empire left the breakfast prepared for them by the British and came to the grand dinner banquet prepared for them by the Russian Empire. The Ottoman Empire was a big variable in Europe, which was related to the pattern of the Eastern Mediterranean, the Suez Canal, the Arabian Sea and the Middle East. For various countries, it was not only a strong influence in the Eastern Mediterranean, but the Ottoman Empire also guarded against the Russian Empire appearing at the door of the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. If these two countries reached an agreement that the Western European powers did not want to see that the Russian Empire could freely enter and exit the Indian Ocean, then it would definitely be a nightmare for them. In particular, the British Empire and the French Empire were particularly nervous, so the negotiations between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire a few days ago were more or less obstructed by Britain and France, so Britain and France caused dissatisfaction from the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. The Russian Empire was previously at war with the Ottoman Empire, and Britain intervened. Eventually, the Russian Empire was sanctioned by Britain, France and other countries. However, as the relationship between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire eased, this sanction seemed to be unjustified. The Russian Empire has repeatedly requested to cancel it, but Britain seems to continue to implement it in industry, which annoyed the Russian Empire. In order to retaliate, the Russian Empire has strengthened its relationship with Britain's rivals since recently, including the United States of America, the Netherlands, and even the Russian Empire and Sweden, which has always been a contender for Nordic hegemony. The Russian Empire intimidated Britain from time to time, and even recently conducted joint naval and army exercises between the Russian Empire, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Denmark in 4 places in the African colony of Ghana, southwestern Burkina Faso, the Swedish colony of Togo, and the Danish colony of Sierra Leone, which made Britain feel the pressure from Northern Europe. With a decline of British and French influence, as the most powerful country in the Near East, with a key strategic position, the Ottoman Empire has become a popular target. Under the current circumstances, the Ottoman Empire can try to bargain with various Western camps instead of becoming a puppet in the hands of Britain. Sultan Abdulaziz I is facing serious internal problems, economic downturn, people's livelihood difficulties, and the military is not strong in the 6 major European countries. The best result for the Ottoman Empire at present is naturally to ease the powerful neighbor to the north, the Russian Empire, to prevent social unrest due to war, to attract industrial technology from Prussia and the Netherlands, and to move closer to the middle line of the Netherlands. Therefore, the easing of relations with the Russian Empire this time is the most critical link. After passing this level, the Ottoman Empire will have the capital to bargain with major powers such as Britain, France, and Russia. This is also what the Russian Empire understood, so the two countries hit it off immediately, which caused dissatisfaction from Britain and France. The French newspaper Le Figaro could not help but list this headline: while Britain was busy dealing with the Netherlands, Russia and the Ottoman Empire took the opportunity to get out of trouble. Is it worth it for Britain? Chapter 508, Is the Netherlands' arrival to challenge Britain's global navy? Francisco Bob, a professor at the Hague University who promotes transnational trade in the Netherlands, pointed out on February 10 that the sanctions against the French Empire, agricultural food failures, and wars around the world in recent years have created a perfect storm of life crises in the decade of 1860. The soaring food prices and the lack of food security networks in various countries have brought serious political and social unrest. Many governments have collapsed due to hunger, and there has been a surge of refugees from poor countries to industrial countries and restored countries, accompanied by the spread of crime during migration. These transnational issues require the cooperation of powerful people in various countries. For the Netherlands, if countries cooperate, especially in contacting the restrictions on foreign trade in various countries, it will help the Netherlands, which has abundant food, to help stabilize global food prices and provide humanitarian assistance to people who starve to death in the world. Of course, many people speculate that the Netherlands is also trying to improve the status of the Dutch guilder and get rid of the opportunity to establish economic dominance by controlling the pound. Obviously, the Netherlands is preparing to start with food security, because the Netherlands' food reserves account for 1/3 of the world's total, and it can almost be said that it remotely controls the pricing power of global food. Of course, the premise is that the international food trade is free and open, rather than countries closing themselves off, so the Netherlands intends to pry open the closed doors of various countries and allow Dutch food producers to occupy the top position in this industry. On February 15, 1869, in Sydney, Australia, in the far east of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the first Director General of the International Red Cross, El Baradei, presided over the establishment of the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Ross, the first Director General of the International Women's Alliance Association, Queen Alexandra, and Henry Darley, the Director General of the International Labour Federation, abbreviated as the Labour Federation, and elected Sakim, the Dean of the School of Economics at the University of Groningen, as the first Director General. The organization called on the international community to pay attention to food security and take effective measures to improve the problem of food and clothing for people in various countries. The organization immediately received great attention, not only because it is concerned about food security, but also because Queen Alexandra of the Netherlands visited the far east of the Netherlands for the first time. Her visit caused a sensation in the far east of the Netherlands. It is even said that on the day when Queen Alexandra arrived at the port of Sydney on the Australian continent, more than 500,000 people lined the streets to welcome Queen Alexandra's visit. It can be seen that the 25-year-old Dutch queen is very popular there. It should be known that since William IV began to advocate the migration of Dutch whites to the Far East in 1861, more than 6 million people from the Netherlands have moved to the Far East in the past 8 or 9 years, and it is not a refugee-style relocation, but regardless of elites, civilians or nobles. Therefore, it is almost a complete system movement. With the large-scale development of large Dutch companies here, even Dutch capitalists from the United States of America have invested in real estate here, so the development of the Far East is absolutely unprecedented. Even faster than the development of the United States in the first half of the century, more American capitalists arrived in Australia and the Dutch East Indies and found that the development of local governments there was well planned, and the development cooperation between the private sector and the government was rapid and powerful. In less than 10 years, the Australian continent has completed the path that the United States has taken for economic development for more than 60 years since 1800, so they are very optimistic about Australia's future development prospects. It is precisely because of this assessment that American capitalists flock to Australia, but they still need to go through the competition of the Dutch. The British Navy is the global competitor of the Dutch Navy. On February 18, 1869, a piece of news came out and shocked the world. His Majesty William IV, King of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, who has always been known for his seclusion, actually signed a new naval principle on the same day. He regarded the British Empire as the main competitor of the Netherlands and expounded on the British Empire's expansion ambitions in the global oceans, including the North Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, which are currently the more marginal areas of the world. William IV attended the commissioning ceremony of the third steam battleship of the Netherlands in the port of Amsterdam on February 17. He delivered a speech after the event, praising the rapid development of the Dutch Navy in recent years for providing a strong guarantee for the maritime security of the Netherlands. He especially praised the effective competition between the Dutch East India Weapons Company and the Dutch Far East Weapons Company, which is conducive to the technological innovation of the replacement of Dutch weapons, especially the fact that the two major weapons companies are capable of manufacturing steam battleships, which has played a role in promoting the internationalization. William IV also said that with the strength of the Dutch Navy, any potential invader can be defeated. Shortly before the speech, William IV had just signed a new Dutch Navy development principle, which listed the broad strategic goals of the Dutch Navy, including the ambition to expand the Dutch Navy to the world and become a new maritime power. The document also stated that the main threat to the Netherlands comes from the world ocean strategic policy led by the British Empire, the military alliances around the Netherlands, and the coercion of major powers, all of which pose a threat to the national security of the Netherlands. If other soft powers such as diplomacy and economy are exhausted, the Netherlands may use military force appropriately to safeguard its own interests in the world situation. William IV did not mention the dispute between Britain, the Netherlands and Spain caused by the visit of the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington to Spain in his speech, but the naval principle mentioned that the Dutch Navy intends to comprehensively strengthen the Dutch Navy's network of allies on both sides of the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, and will also enhance and strengthen the Netherlands' geopolitical position in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This naval principle also lists the Arctic Ocean as a particularly important area for the Netherlands. Britain is very sensitive to this because behind the British Isles are Greenland and Iceland in the north. They used to be in the hands of Denmark. Now Greenland currently belongs to Denmark in the west and Sweden in the east, while Iceland continues to remain in the hands of Denmark. However, the Netherlands, Sweden and Denmark all have joint garrisons. This effectively implements the Nordic alliance formed by the three countries. Because of this, Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, is the headquarters of the Nordic alliance. Because of this, the British Empire has always accused the Netherlands, Sweden and Denmark of trying to militarize the Arctic region, threatening the security of the British mainland. This time, William IV's maritime principles are the first to elaborate on the future direction of the Dutch Navy's construction, and fully express the Netherlands' ambitions. Because of this, it is obviously challenging Britain's maritime hegemony. Faced with such a direct provocation from the Netherlands, many people are worried about Amsterdam, because Britain's offshore balancer is supposed to restrict any country on the European continent from threatening Britain's maritime hegemony. Now that William IV has said it directly and done a good job, will London be willing to accept this rough and simple challenge from the Netherlands? Most people do not think that Britain will compromise. Chapter 509 Target New Zealand? The naval principles signed by William IV surprised European countries, because it meant that, with the dispute over Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain, William IV's recognition of the Dutch Navy's plan to challenge Britain, and the deterioration of Anglo-Dutch relations in recent years, people realized that Anglo-Dutch relations were even more difficult to be friendly. No one knows what Your Majesty thinks. Prime Minister Thorbecke looked at William IV with admiration. At this moment, the most difficult decision should be made by London. Thorbecke couldn't help but admire it. Who could have thought that William IV, who had just signed the Dutch naval principles, actually sent a telegram to Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom? In terms of the content, His Majesty William IV actually said that the Dutch naval principles were just a vision, and in fact only had a guiding role for the Netherlands, and there was no intention to challenge the empire. If this is the case, Thorbecke would naturally despise it and regard it as a face-saving project of privately begging for mercy. However, Thorbecke also saw in the content of the telegram that William IV implicitly proposed that the Netherlands asked Britain to recognize the Dutch sphere of influence. In it, William IV asked Britain to recognize that the South Indian Ocean and the South Pacific belonged to the Dutch sphere of influence, and in exchange, the Netherlands recognized that the Atlantic and North Indian Oceans were the British naval sphere of influence. My Prime Minister, do you think London will agree? William IV asked. Thorbecke said, I hesitated at first, but if I put myself in the role, I finally found that this is actually a deal that Britain can make at present. William IV asked curiously, why? Thorbecke thought for a while and said, because it is not appropriate for Britain to make enemies at present, especially when those powerful countries in the Near East are working together to build nests. Britain's current energy has been overly dispersed. It is unexpected that the easing of relations between the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire this time is actually brokered by Your Majesty. What's more, What Britain doesn't know is that the visit of Speaker of the House Huntington to Spain, which is currently being discussed internationally, was also promoted by Your Majesty throughout the process. If it knew, London would definitely explode. You said if, William IV said proudly, Britain's environment has been destroyed by us, so it is currently in a dilemma. Therefore, the Netherlands' proposal of naval construction at this time will greatly prevent Britain from acting rashly. However, in the long run, Britain may suppress the Netherlands, so we have to guard against it. Thorbecke nodded in approval. Britain's dominance at sea was formally established after it defeated Napoleon I in Spain in 1805. Over the past 60 years, Britain has been working hard to maintain this role, and even balanced and suppressed countries that developed navies on the European continent. It is precisely because of this that the Netherlands chose to develop the Dutch naval sphere of influence in the Far East, far away from the European mainland, which is undoubtedly correct. It is a place that Britain does not pay much attention to, because Britain has too many interests to take care of. The strength of the Netherlands is there, and Britain is actually not worth a loss if it confronts the Netherlands. Some people may think that this is a bit of a disparagement of Britain, but don't think of Britain too noble. If the Dutch army was so easy to defeat, Britain would have robbed the Dutch East Indies long ago, and it would have to wait until now. William IV said at this time, "You must know that after Britain and the Netherlands fought a war in the Far East in 1824, Britain, in order to fight with the Netherlands and let other countries benefit, finally signed the famous Anglo-Dutch Treaty with the Netherlands. Britain recognized the Netherlands' sovereignty over Sumatra and the Dutch occupation of the island. The Netherlands withdrew its protest against Britain's occupation of Malacca, later Singapore, and recognized Britain's occupation of the island. The Netherlands could not establish a colony on the Malay Peninsula or sign any treaties with local rulers. Britain could not establish a colony on Sumatra or sign any treaties with local rulers. The Netherlands agreed to hand over all its strongholds and interests in India, and to hand over Malacca and its territories to Britain. Britain agreed to hand over all its bases and industries on Sumatra, including several industrial plants, and to hand over Bencoolen to the Netherlands. Britain could not establish bases or sign any treaties with local rulers on islands south of the Singapore Strait, including the Leeward Islands. All of the above territories and industries, after reaching an agreement, will take effect on March 1, 1825. William IV smiled and said, "Since Britain reached a similar deal with us 44 years ago, I think Britain will agree." Thorbecke also smiled and said, "Your Majesty, I agree very much." This seemingly transactional issue must have stumped many people in London, William IV said with a meaningful smile. If they knew that I was just trying to open up the bottom line of Britain and let them take a small step back, just to ask for more benefits in the future, they might. British Empire, London. Buckingham Palace was also somewhat silent in the face of the transaction telegram sent by William IV. Queen Victoria looked at the silence of Prime Minister Disraeli and Foreign Secretary Russell, and was suddenly a little upset. Perhaps sensing the Queen's dissatisfaction, Russell also began to popularize the Anglo-Dutch Treaty signed by the two countries 44 years ago. The trade regulations stipulate that merchant ships of the Netherlands and Britain can enter each other's territories and must pay a fixed fee agreed upon by both parties. In addition, except for the spice trade in the Moluccas, the Netherlands cannot monopolize trade in the Malay archipelago. Third, both parties shall not hinder each other from trading with any local forces, and cooperate to eliminate pirates active in the Malay archipelago. Both parties have special preferential treatment for any trade in India, Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and the Malay archipelago, and consider reducing tariffs. Prime Minister Disraeli said, "But the background is different now." Ross retorted, "I dare not agree. The background at that time was that after the Napoleonic Wars, both Britain and the Netherlands hoped to maintain good relations between the two sides. There are also several factors that we in the British Empire value more." Russell said, "One of them is the strategic position of the Netherlands. At that time, Britain realized that the Netherlands was very close to the British mainland and that the Netherlands was a very suitable place to launch an attack on the British Empire, so the British Empire must maintain good relations with the Netherlands. The second reason is that we have the same religious sect as the Netherlands. After the Napoleonic Wars, the original anti-French alliance countries gradually split into several factions due to religious sects. Prussia, Austria, and Tsarist Russia had bad relations with Britain, so Britain needed to win over the Netherlands, which had the same religious sect. Queen Victoria asked curiously, "The transaction is a two-way deal. What about the Netherlands? Russell said, the debt to Britain. Before the Napoleonic Wars, the Dutch East India Company's trade in Asia declined, and the officials were greedy. Facing a financial crisis, the Dutch East India Company borrowed money from Britain at that time to solve the crisis. In 1781, the Netherlands owed Britain £25 million, and in 1799 it reached £1.44 million. After the Dutch East India Company was dissolved in 1799, the British debts before the company were spread to the Dutch government. Therefore, the Netherlands hopes to have a good relationship with Britain and has negotiated to solve the debt problem. Disraeli. Originally Britain could have used this as an excuse to interfere more in the Netherlands' domestic affairs, but after Belgium was separated from the Netherlands resentment towards Britain increased sharply, and in the end the whole of the Netherlands gritted its teeth and finally paid it back in the first half of the century, and relations between Britain and the Netherlands have been estranged since then. Russell did not refute. The diplomatic masterpiece of his good friend Viscount Palmerston was to make Belgium leave the rule of the Netherlands and become a satellite state of Britain on the European continent, which doubled Britain's influence on the European continent. If this were the case, sacrificing relations with the Netherlands would not be a big deal, but the mistake was that Belgium had recently returned to the embrace of the Netherlands after some actions by the Netherlands, and had almost become a vassal state of the Netherlands. Leopold II became a puppet, which actually shrunk Britain's influence on the European continent. That is to say, our current relationship with the Netherlands is no longer the same as before. Prime Minister Disraeli looked at Russell and said unconsciously, since the day we helped Belgium to break away from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands has hated us. The two people in front of him, one is the leader of the Whig Party. The Whig Party was extremely powerful under the leadership of Palmerston, relying on the position established by the First World War in Belgium. Queen Victoria's uncle Leopold I became the King of Belgium. It can be said that it was a generous gift from Viscount Palmerston to Queen Victoria when she became the Queen of England in 1839. It can be said that he instantly captured the favor of Queen Victoria. It was precisely because of this that Queen Victoria was very protective of Palmerston and the Whig Party in the following 20 or 30 years, making the Tory party always excluded by the royal family. At present, the Netherlands' efforts against Britain have helped the Tory party get out of trouble. As long as the favor given by the Whig Party is broken, the challenge between the Tory party and the Whig Party will be easily solved and become a force of equal strength. I think the two people in front of him also understand this. In fact, Disraeli should be grateful to William IV and the Thorbecke government. If it weren't for them, the Whigs would still be enjoying the glory left by Viscount Palmerston. Queen Victoria pondered for a moment and said, if we agree to the Dutch request, what do you think the British Empire will lose? Queen Victoria's question stunned the two. Yes, if they agree to the Dutch, what will Britain lose? This question made them unable to answer. Disraeli said, the Netherlands will become a regional power, which will become a geographical restriction for Britain, and it may not be acceptable for the British Empire to save face, that is, other countries will propose the same conditions to Britain in the future. It is difficult to turn back, and it is difficult for us to refuse the requests of other parties. But if we say refusing, the Netherlands seems to be the overlord of that place now. This is something known to the whole world, but why did William IV still make this request? I can't figure it out. Russell, no one will make requests for no reason. They will always do so when they need it. Russell suddenly said vigilantly, I think William IV is a person who will not do anything without profit. Queen Victoria thought about it and it was true. That young man has always been like this. Suddenly, she thought of something and looked at Disraeli and Russell. The two people next to her also looked at her. The three exclaimed at the same time, New Zealand. Chapter 510 Greece takes power, Middle East geopolitics changes. 1869, King William II of the Kingdom of Greece initiated a meeting of prime ministers in Athens, Greece, with the participation of Prime Ministers Gorchakov, Prime Minister of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Rainer Ferdinand, and Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, Prince Abdul Vasily. Representatives of the four parties signed an agreement of understanding on the joint coordination center of the positions of the four countries. King William II of Greece said that the document showed that it was intended to resolve the disputes in the Middle East and the Balkan Peninsula in Eastern Europe, and to ensure that the security interests of the four countries would not be damaged in the local area. In the near future, The four countries would not take the initiative to provoke the parties that signed the treaty on the Balkan Peninsula issue. At the same time, the four countries would oppose the intervention of other countries outside the region in the Balkan Peninsula, which would cause destructive and harmful acts that would damage security. The four-nation coordination center is in line with some of the Dutch ideas. William II said that under the framework of multi-party participation, international conflict time coordination should be carried out. Second, the parties and stakeholders in the region should form a permanent multilateral coordination mechanism. Third, Greece regards participation in the decision-making process as a necessary condition for protecting Greek national sovereignty and equality between countries. This at least illustrates two issues. On the one hand, it prevents the Balkan Peninsula from becoming a powder keg for the sake of their own interests, and even attracts foreign powers to make trouble. On the other hand, it prevents other countries from secretly creating unrest in the Balkan Peninsula, so that the Balkan Peninsula becomes the four signatory countries, causing conflict crises and providing excuses for other countries to intervene militarily and politically. In addition, the four parties are preparing to hold a four-party prime ministerial meeting in each country every year to resolve the tension in the Balkan Peninsula and Eastern Europe. As the relationship between Britain and Russia enters a sharp confrontation form of mixed hegemony, especially the shipping convenience provided by the opening of the Suez Canal, Britain has accelerated its policy of moving its strategic goals eastward, and thus the strategic conflict with the Russian Empire has intensified. Then, under the low-level conflict direction of Britain, proxy wars and initiating political conflicts in various regions have become Britain's external balance of regional hegemony for decades, allowing Britain to intervene in other countries' internal affairs. Especially after the Napoleonic Wars, Britain, relying on its strength as a maritime hegemon and having no rivals at sea, repeatedly suppressed emerging powers such as France, Tsarist Russia, and Austria on the European continent. To this end, it supported the rise of countries such as Prussia and Italy to counter and balance them. As Britain's tactics were exposed in various countries, the Russian Empire saw the revival of the traditional anti-British melody. Alexander believed that this was the opportunity for the Russian Empire to rise again and the only answer to the European crisis. In addition to the security strategy of the Russian Empire, Alexander II may have believed that Britain's irresponsible intervention in European affairs had destroyed the international relations system and sacrificed the strategic trust between each other, causing the situation to develop to the edge of the tolerance of various countries, reflecting the situation in all areas, including security strategy. The Russian Empire's recent high-level foreign visits were concentrated in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, and it continued to reach a basic consensus with the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire that the military forces of non-regional countries could not enter the Black Sea and the Balkan Peninsula. The chaos caused by Britain's entry before was a precedent that the Russian Empire often mentioned. Alexander II visited Greece some time ago and met with William II, which not only confirmed Greece's priority position in the Russian Empire's foreign policy, but also recognized Greece's status as an arbitrator and stakeholder in the Balkan Peninsula. Alexander II also supported Greece's identity as a coordinator of relations with the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. With the confirmation of Alexander II, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire also recognized Greece's status. From then on, Greece became the coordinator of relations between the three major countries. It also became the key to the prosperity and security of the region when the four countries held the Balkan Summit in Athens to confirm that the Convention on the Legal Status of the Balkan Peninsula is the key to the prosperity and security of the region. In short, with the easing of relations between the four countries, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the small and medium-sized country of Greece are expected to establish a brand new relationship, which makes the four countries away from the risk of war in the near future. It is more conducive to suppressing the influence of Britain. Queen Victoria of the Netherlands and several others who were discussing it were somewhat unable to react when they heard the telegram just released from Athens. Disraeli's face became even gloomier. Foreign Secretary Russell's face was equally embarrassed. "This must be the trick of the Netherlands," Disraeli said angrily. Seeing Queen Victoria and Russell looking over, Disraeli guessed, "Who is William II? He is the father of William IV. William IV's strategy is currently to provoke us on the Spanish issue. And now William II has initiated a summit of Greece, Tsarist Russia, Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire in Athens, Greece, to reduce Britain's influence in the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean, with the intention of easing relations. But we are just the opposite. We hope to see more chaos there, which will be our opportunity." He raised his head with a gloomy face. Now that the British Empire is challenged on both the east and west sides of the European continent, Britain has fallen into a passive position. Therefore, I suspect this is a premeditated plan. Obviously, this father and son kings are testing us, just as we guessed just now, to make us make concessions on the issues of the South Indian Ocean and the South Pacific, or even give them New Zealand, given the Netherlands' ambitions there. The more he talked, the darker Disraeli's face turned. "The Netherlands has a good plan," Russell said at this time. "It is obviously to protect its own interests and threaten Britain, but it seems to have managed to drag other countries into it, making it difficult for Britain to absorb them directly for a while. The anger of the Spanish people makes it difficult for Britain to take action around Spain, and in the Balkan Peninsula, as the three major powers compromise these relations, they created internal injuries, and it is difficult for us to find a loophole to start with." Disraeli sneered with dissatisfaction. "If you had known earlier, why did you Whigs promise William IV to push his father William II to the ancient Greek king? Now you are tying yourself up in knots." Russell did not argue, but admitted, at the beginning, Lord Viscount Palmerston only wanted to reduce the influence of those countries and balance them. Therefore, while winning over the Netherlands, he also wanted the Netherlands to compete with those countries and Greece, so as to weaken the Netherlands and the Balkan countries, killing two birds with one stone. I didn't expect that William IV did not directly participate in Greece's internal affairs over the years, but instead supported the rule of William II. This prevented the Netherlands from getting involved, and the relations with Tsarist Russia, Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire did not deteriorate, and even improved the relations. It was unexpected. Chapter 511, The English Channel Welcomes Bad Guests? Queen Victoria was also embarrassed, and said with some dissatisfaction, "According to you, how should Britain deal with this so-called provocation of the Netherlands now?" At this time, she could not see that the Netherlands, which was originally only favored by her, had become a country that Britain had to look at after 10 years of development. Britain no longer had the ability to send a local fleet to make the Netherlands tremble and give up the side that Britain saw benefits. Recalling the scene when William IV's great-grandfather William I obediently gave up Belgium when she just inherited the British throne 34 years ago, Queen Victoria seemed to be unable to believe that the change would be so great. The Netherlands completed the sharp transformation of a great power in just 30 years. Even the British Empire had to take the Netherlands' opinions seriously. In recent years, the Netherlands almost stepped on Britain's shoulders to rise to power, which made her very angry. She even wanted to cancel her marriage with Greece to express her dissatisfaction, but in the end, she seemed to have thought of something and suppressed this impulse. Just when the three were silent again, the Queen's Palace steward brought another telegram. This telegram surprised the three and made them look very different. It turned out that the telegram showed that a Dutch fleet had set sail from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and had arrived in the north of the English Channel, preparing to pass through the English Channel. The fleet consisted of the Dutch steam battleship Rotterdam and 3 second and third level sailing battleships, a total of 4 warships. Queen Victoria saw that the two looked uneasy after reading the telegram she had sent out, and asked, "What should we do now?" No one would think that the 4 Dutch warships came empty-handed. They all thought that the person being escorted should be Huntington, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, and the goal was to visit Spain. This made Queen Victoria, Prime Minister Disraeli, and Foreign Secretary Russell feel that the situation was very difficult. Interception? Many people in the UK had proposed this idea before, because with the strength of the British Navy, interception was not a problem. Apart from other things, the British mainland was right next to the English Channel, which was very convenient in terms of proximity. Moreover, the Dutch naval fleet is far inferior to the British one. This is a consensus among everyone. If the British intercept it, there is not much threat at present. But what makes the three people headache is that if they intercept it, it will mean that the Anglo-Dutch relationship will deteriorate sharply. In that case, the relationship will be difficult to restore in the near future, and it may even deteriorate more and more. This seems to be somewhat inconsistent with the current interests of the United Kingdom. Even Disraeli, who is extremely opposed to the Netherlands, has to admit that the relationship with the Netherlands has a great impact on the environment of the United Kingdom. The difference between good and bad is very significant for the barometer of the United Kingdom. Disraeli thought so, not to mention Queen Victoria and Russell. For a moment, the three fell into silence again, and the room fell into silence. Prussia, Berlin. In the past few months, the prime ministers of the Russian Empire and Britain have successively visited the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East. The main purpose of Disraeli's trip was to win over the Ottoman Empire to continue to block the Russian Empire's southward advance, but also to cooperate with Britain to prevent European countries from infiltrating the Indian Ocean through the Suez Canal, which can be regarded as blocking Europe's eastward advance. They planned to form an Anglo-Austrian alliance in the Middle East to cooperate with Britain's East Mediterranean strategy. It was okay before, but recently it has been difficult to maintain, and it can be regarded as nothing has been gained. And the Prime Minister of the Russian Empire Gorchakov attended the four-nation summit of the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Kingdom of Greece in Constantinople, intending to band together for warmth when they were isolated by Britain and France in the international community, but they could only cooperate with regional countries to balance the pressure of Britain. With the rise of the Netherlands, the United States of America, and Prussia, Britain has suffered disastrous defeats in other places in the past few years, so it has limited energy to invest in the Balkan Peninsula. Therefore, it has been strategically shrinking in recent years. Look at the Yemen region of the Ottoman Empire and the Arabian Peninsula. Italy, Spain, France, Prussia and the Netherlands have obtained the territories of the Ottoman Empire from Britain as an influence and plantation there. In the past, Britain would have liked to enjoy it alone, so where would we eat meat? With the strategic shrinkage of Britain in recent years, the autonomy of large and small countries in the Ottoman Empire, Greece, Italy and other regions has gradually increased. Faced with a growing confidence of powerful countries such as Britain, Russia and France, the geopolitical structure of the Middle East and Eastern Europe has shown new changes. The situation is calm on the surface, but in fact it is turbulent. In the Crimean War era that began in 1853, the Balkan Peninsula was the focus of competition between the two major groups of Britain, France, the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire. After the defeat of the Russian Empire, Britain and France became the only two powers, and once dominated the affairs of the Middle East and other Eastern European countries together with the neutral Austrian Empire. However, after Metternich's death, the Austrian Empire began to be surpassed by Prussia. The two countries almost fought within the German Confederation, and finally occupied the north and south of the German Confederation respectively. In the past few years, Prussia unified the German Confederation outside Austria, which seriously impacted the situation in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. In addition, Britain gradually suffered defeats in North America and South Africa, which damaged Britain's image and dignity, causing Britain's strategy to shift to competing with the Netherlands, France, Prussia, etc. The Middle East gradually became less important. After the war between Tsarist Russia and the Ottoman Empire 2 years ago, Britain was forced to join the war, but Britain, which had no intention of fighting, was defeated by the Tsarist Russia. Britain lost points again. This time, even the Ottoman Empire became disloyal and no longer completely relied on Britain. However, the situation has changed. The British government represented by Disraeli is unable to cope with the current situation. The ability that Britain has demonstrated over and over again has exposed the weakness of Britain's national strength. The Near Eastern European countries are no longer following Britain's lead. This is why Britain's recent diplomatic visits to various European countries seem to have gone wrong, and it has repeatedly hit a wall. For example, in North America, it is unwilling to support the sovereignty of the United States of America over the South, but it is unwilling to recognize the status of the Confederacy of the South. As a result, before he returned to London, both countries announced their dissatisfaction with Prime Minister Disraeli's formation arrangement, and even caused protests against the British government because of this among the locals. Disraeli exaggerated the threat of the Netherlands in North America all the way, trying to create a plan for the Dutch to step down, but he was met with more anti-British influence within the United States of America. In the end, Andrew Johnson continued to become the President of the United States, while Britain became a scapegoat and was also coldly treated by all parties in the United States of America. Even many American families announced that they would not do business with the British. Britain tried hard to win over Italy in Europe to maintain its influence in the Mediterranean, but was publicly poured cold water by Emmanuel II, indicating that he had no intention of becoming a British pawn to balance the great powers on the European continent with Britain. Britain urged Portugal to balance the influence of the Netherlands in South America, but after being defeated by the Netherlands in Africa, Louis I was obviously unable to take direct action against the Netherlands at present, and was obviously keeping a low profile. Britain strongly proposed the establishment of an alliance of maritime powers, but various countries were dissatisfied with Britain as the dominant force and believed that Britain should not be the only power, so they were unwilling to support it and eventually participated in the Pacific Partnership Organization established by the Netherlands, but it was advocated by Britain. Britain intended to win over Spain when the relationship between Spain and France was strained, but unexpectedly, Spain was more willing to be with the Netherlands. Recently, the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives even visited Spain and supported Spain's sovereignty over Gibraltar. Instead, it has caused mutual disgust between Britain, the Netherlands and even the Spanish people. It can be regarded as a strange move by the British government. In short, according to the European Times, Britain's image is too bad at present, which has triggered a wave of negative comments from the public opinion. Prussian King William I and Moltke listened quietly to Bismarck's analysis. As they listened to Bismarck's thoughts more and more deeply, they both felt that their hearts were beating faster and faster. Britain's decline means that other countries have an opportunity. The French Empire has been dragged in the Far East and is unable to start a war again on the European continent. Moreover, the goodwill of various countries towards France has almost dropped below zero. In this regard, Prussia is at least better. After all, compared with a blatant invasion of the Russian Empire, Prussia is an internal affair in the German Confederation. At this time, Britain's influence has declined, which is an opportunity for many countries to be promoted. Can Prussia be promoted? The thought made both men tremble all over. Their eyes were full of expectation. Bismarck also saw this familiar look, and he was not unfamiliar with it. He himself was like this. Don't let Britain interfere in our actions, and don't let the Netherlands, Austria-Hungary and Spain take advantage of the situation. Bismarck analyzed, only in this way can we get the biggest share of the pie in the next war against France. For this, Your Majesty, we need to compromise with these countries. How to compromise? Bismarck's statement made William I full of curiosity. It's different to have a good subordinate. Thinking back to when he didn't bring Bismarck under his command, he was too tired to think about it. If we want Prussia to complete the task and pay a lower price, then we must make some concessions, Bismarck said. For example, Belgium, which the Dutch have always valued, we should clearly support it. Open support? When will it start? Moltke asked. Starting from today, after our meeting, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will start publishing in newspapers advocating for the interests of the Netherlands and Belgium to support them. I think the Dutch government will understand our good intentions. Is it too hasty? No, this is the effect we want. Chapter 512 Spain bet too big this time. We're spreading in Europe about whether the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington would visit Spain in the next 1 or 2 days to support Spain's sovereignty over Gibraltar. At 11 a.m. on February 19, 1869, the French Imperial Ministry of Foreign Affairs urgently announced a message that a small fleet of 4 warships, led by the steam battleship Rotterdam, was passing through the English Channel and heading south, with the target possibly being the Pacific port of Spain. This attracted the attention of Europe and the world. At 12 noon on the same day, the French Ministry of Defense reported that the French Empire Coastal Fleet discovered that 4 British warships were sailing behind the Dutch fleet, also heading towards the northern coastal area of Spain. The French Ministry of Defense announced that France discovered that the British battleships were all the main battleships of the home fleet, and it was clear that Britain was following the Dutch fleet with a clear goal. The French Ministry of Defense said that in the face of the threat posed by the fleets of the 2 countries sailing in the English Channel, Paris dispatched several warships to follow and monitor them. With the news released by Paris, many people speculated that the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives might be on the Dutch fleet, otherwise Britain would not have to send such a battle. As the fleet slowly arrived at the coast of Spain, many people have speculated that this will inevitably attract the attention of Europe. The military of Britain, Spain and the Netherlands will all be on high alert, and the tension around Spain has suddenly risen. The Spanish Ministry of Defense announced at 1400 hours on the afternoon of February 19 that it had conducted exercises in the northern naval port and would welcome the visit of its Dutch counterparts. The Spanish Navy has entered the period of enhanced combat readiness guidance, and the time will be slowly adjusted. At the same time, the Dutch Ministry of Defense announced that the Dutch Navy and the Spanish Navy had formulated an annual naval joint exercise a few months ago. This exercise will be carried out in the next week. During the joint exercise, the two militaries will learn from each other's strengths and appreciate Spain's history as the most powerful navy in Europe for centuries. The experience of the Spanish Navy deserves the Netherlands to take it seriously. After the study, the Netherlands will learn valuable experience in naval warfare. At the same time, the British military stated that it would not turn a blind eye to actions that harm British interests. The British Navy will do something to safeguard the interests of the country. It is hoped that the relevant countries will think twice before harming British interests. According to Spanish sources, on that day, several British naval vessels had slowly come out of the Strait of Gibraltar at the exit of the Mediterranean Sea and headed towards the Pacific Ocean in northern Spain. Obviously, this was a threat to attack the Spanish and Dutch fleets from both the north and the south. The warships of Britain, Spain, the Netherlands, and France gathered in northern Spain, and for a time the atmosphere there was so thick that it was suffocating. Many people were afraid of accidental firing in a naval war between Britain and France. If any country dares to attack Dutch warships, the Netherlands has a way to make them pay a heavy price, the Dutch Ministry of Defense warned unabashedly. It is the right of every country to conduct military exercises with other countries, and no one can deprive it of that. At the same time, visiting other countries is also other people's business, and no one can deprive it of that. The Dutch army is responsible for protecting its own citizens. The current escalation of the situation in Spain is not good for anyone. The Dutch army is always keeping a close eye on the safety of its citizens. If necessary, the Dutch army will not back down. Any country that infringes on the rights of the Netherlands must think twice. The toughness of the Dutch Ministry of Defense shows that the Netherlands supports Huntington. Obviously, although it is unwilling for Huntington to visit Spain, it must be said that the Netherlands is very serious about maintaining international threats. In this regard, Britain did not give in. After the Dutch Ministry of Defense released the news, the British Foreign Office pointed out that the Netherlands was covering up. Obviously, the Netherlands attacked the blind spot of deliberately damaging British interests. Britain was very dissatisfied with this behavior. At the same time, the British Foreign Office asked the Netherlands to guarantee that it would not make any actions or remarks that would damage Britain on the Gibraltar issue, otherwise Britain would not give up. At the same time, the British Ministry of Defense stated that it would double the number of warships currently assembled in the coastal areas of Spain to more than 16 within the next week. The news released by the UK immediately caused a sensation, and even many people in Spain became uneasy. Many people in the Netherlands also felt pressured by this. Obviously, the world knew the strength of the British Navy very well. Could the Netherlands and Spain withstand it? The visit of Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington to Spain involved his remarks on Gibraltar, pushing Spain to the brink of war. Britain has repeatedly warned, so why doesn't the Spanish government back off? If it is said that this incident was caused by the executive department of the Dutch Thorbecke cabinet government being unable to stop Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington's willful behavior, Spain can take the opportunity to take responsibility for the Netherlands' own misfortune and take the opportunity to provoke the conflict over Gibraltar between Spain and Britain that has been dormant for more than 100 years. This gamble on the line of fire makes Spain a battlefield at any time. In Spain, an informed politician from the Spanish opposition party revealed with dissatisfaction that the Dutch Prime Minister's office and the Dutch Ministry of Defense once dissuaded Huntington from visiting Spain. The Spanish Parliament even wanted to withdraw the invitation at one point under the strong opposition of the UK, but Huntington still insisted on visiting Spain. According to relevant information, this means that Huntington must have invited Spain to visit Spain, and the Spanish Parliament even gave Huntington the content of supporting Gibraltar, which led to today's scene. Since the Dutch Executive Department has already opposed it, Spain should be able to find a way out, withdraw the invitation, and say no to Huntington. Spain understands Britain's tough attitude. Gibraltar may cause a big incident between Britain and Spain, but it wants to fight hard. In addition to Huntington's resolute attitude, there are naturally strategic considerations. The Spanish government must have seen that the Netherlands has been tied to this superstorm. If something happens, His Majesty of the Netherlands will bear it, so it dares to let go. Spain has always been looking forward to other major powers supporting and standing on Spain's side after an accident between Britain and Spain. In the past, the French Empire was a good choice. When Spain had problems, France sent troops to protect it. However, as the relationship between the French Empire and Britain eased, under the pressure of Britain, The French Empire's support for Spain's Gibraltar complex had gradually decreased, and it even dared not talk about this topic publicly. Napoleon III did not dare to promise since he came to power, which made Spain very dissatisfied from Isabella II to ordinary people. Especially when Spain was facing domestic unrest before, Paris even wanted to support Isabella II's uncle to become the new king of Spain, which shocked Isabella II and became a pioneer in anti-French. Under her leadership, the Kingdom of Spain's subsequent series of anti-French actions brought the relationship between the two countries to a low point. The Netherlands used to only selectively support Spain, but rarely dared to express opinions on the Gibraltar issue. Of course, Spain didn't care before. But with the rise of the Netherlands as a new power, the Netherlands' status has changed rapidly. With a close relationship between Spain and the Netherlands, Spain is no longer satisfied with the Netherlands just selling weapons and ordinary political support to Spain. So Spain is actually using the mess caused by the visit of Huntington, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, to drag the Netherlands into the water. As the fourth most important person in the Netherlands, Huntington insisted on visiting Spain and supporting Spain. No matter what, he represented the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Dutch government had to provide protection for his trip, especially since Britain had repeatedly warned him not to visit Spain and endorsed Spain's position on Gibraltar. He came anyway, so the Dutch military naturally had to protect him strictly. Before he arrived in Spain, Dutch warships had already attracted warships from Britain, France and other countries to the northern waters of Spain. Once a conflict occurred, the four countries of Britain, the Netherlands, and even France and Spain would collide. The Spanish opposition continued to complain dissatisfiedly. The cabinet government of Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez may be calculating that this is a risk and an opportunity. The conflict between Britain and the Netherlands broke out because of Huntington's visit to Spain, which means that the Netherlands and Britain have become direct conflicting parties over the Spanish issue. In that case, Spain has found an important ally on the issue of Gibraltar. This becomes a war for the Netherlands, and there is no question of whether to send troops to support Spain. If the Netherlands wants to win, it must mobilize its army to try its best. In this case, Spain can evolve from an agent of the Netherlands or an anti-British target to the Netherlands coming to Spain to help Spain fight. Moreover, once the war starts, it will be a multiple complex war including military and economic. When Spain has problems, it becomes a problem with the Netherlands, and when the Netherlands and Spain have problems, it immediately becomes a problem with the Netherlands' allies. With this idea, Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez and Queen Isabella II will let Huntington do things in Spain. The original plan was that Huntington would be greeted by Spanish speaker Julian after leaving the port, rest for a night, and set off to Madrid the next day. After visiting Queen Isabella II, he would meet with Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez, arrive at the Spanish House of Representatives to give a speech, and then return to the border of Gibraltar to support Spain's position. Yesterday, information came out that Huntington's presence in Spain has increased, and he even plans to hold a press conference in Spain. In the afternoon, he will visit the British and Spanish Naval War Memorial and give a speech. At the same time, Huntington will participate in the hearing on the survival of the Dutch in Spain and attend the meeting of the Spanish and Dutch Friendship Association. It was also reported that these were changed after the Spanish speaker Julian communicated with the Huntington team, showing that the legislative bodies of both sides are of the same mind and are stepping up their efforts to provoke Britain. Even now in Madrid, many places are filled with Spanish and Dutch flags standing side by side on the streets, and there are also various slogans such as thanking Huntington, Spain and the Netherlands for their cooperation. It is as high profile as it can be. Finally, the Spanish opposition called on the Spanish government not to be used as a gun by others. What Spain needs is a safe and stable international environment, not a risky action. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513, The Swedish Prime Minister Stands Up for the Netherlands? While the northern waters of Spain were about to welcome the visit of the Dutch fleet and the watching of the British and French fleets, foreign visitors were welcomed in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. The visit of the Swedish Prime Minister of Justice, Count Louis the Elder, who expressed his willingness to follow the guidance of His Majesty King Carl XVI of Sweden and assist in the company in specific actions to deal with regional emergencies. Count Louis the Elder pointed out that in the Kingdom of Sweden, the mainstream public opinion in Sweden supports increasing Sweden's national defense to deal with the security threats of its allies and its own security interests. Once Sweden's allies, the Netherlands and Denmark, need it, Sweden will definitely follow suit and coordinate with its allies. At noon on February 19, 1869, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke told a visiting team led by the Swedish Prime Minister of Justice that he hoped that the Netherlands and Sweden would deepen cooperation and maintain not only Northern Europe, but also the peace and stability of the entire Europe and the entire Atlantic region. Count Louis the Elder expressed his desire to continue to maintain friendly relations between the Netherlands and Sweden for this purpose, and wrote down the consensus and specific actions to deal with regional emergencies. Count Louis the Elder said that Swedish society has a high degree of awareness of the alliance between the Netherlands and Sweden, and that Swedish public opinion supports Sweden's increase in military spending on the defense budget to cope with Sweden's insufficient naval power. At the same time, Sweden will cooperate with the Netherlands in world maritime security to safeguard maritime security interests. Count Louis the Elder also met with Dutch Minister of Justice Ross. As the founder and president of the International Hague Court, the contact between the two people is very eye-catching. When meeting with Count Louis the Elder, Prime Minister Thorbecke said that the Netherlands is grateful for Sweden's support. He said that Count Louis the Elder played a key role in the friendly relations and deep friendship between the Netherlands and Sweden. The Count repeatedly emphasized that the connection between the Netherlands and Sweden, which is to help each other in times of trouble, has made the relationship between Sweden and the Netherlands stronger and has important interests for European security. Count Louis the Elder, the Prime Minister of Justice of Sweden, pointed out that the Netherlands is located in the heart of the European powers, surrounded by superpowers such as Britain, France and Prussia. The Netherlands is located at a key point between them, which is related to regional strategic security. Therefore, the cooperation between the Netherlands and Sweden and the cooperation between the Netherlands and other countries are the most important balancing strategies for the Netherlands. It is conducive to maintaining peace in the European region. When he spoke, he said that he was inspired by the idea of His Majesty Karl XVI to promote regional peace, stability and security. In response to the threat to the Netherlands and Sweden, countermeasures were negotiated in advance. The two countries will confront the threat based on the signed covenant, laws and military cooperation. Count Louis the Elder then visited William IV on behalf of Karl XVI. He presented a letter written by Karl XVI himself. When William IV received the delegation, he said, "Sweden and the Netherlands should have the spirit of a community of life and should carry out all-round cooperation, including security issues, economic development issues and more social exchanges." He emphasized that the Netherlands also faces threats from the sea and should strengthen cooperation to avoid being defeated one by one. William IV looked at Count Louis the Elder and said, "The Netherlands will not deliberately challenge powerful countries, because the Netherlands is only protecting itself, especially challenging countries such as Britain, France and Prussia." Sweden's visit to the Netherlands made people realize that something was wrong, especially at this time point. Count Louis the Elder openly and secretly expressed Sweden's attitude of standing with the Netherlands, which made people feel that Sweden seemed to be really here to support the Netherlands this time. However, some people were puzzled, but some people understood very well that this was due to Britain's own mistakes. A few years ago, Britain supported forces in the Norwegian region of the United Kingdom of Sweden, intending to overthrow the rule of Karl XVI of Sweden over Norway. This caused a huge disturbance in Sweden, and Sweden almost fought with Britain. At that time, the Netherlands stood on Sweden's side and provided strong support both in terms of newspapers and military affairs. This made the Swedes very grateful to the Netherlands. This is why Karl XVI formed an alliance with the Netherlands, and the unprecedented unity of opinion in his country. Even Norway did not dare to oppose it, because opposition almost meant political incorrectness. "Britain will soften towards the Netherlands," William IV said confidently. Old Count Louis looked at the young face of William IV, who was extremely confident, and his heart sank. The more William IV was like this, the more he felt that Sweden's future relationship with the Netherlands would decline. He didn't like this feeling very much, because it meant that Sweden needed to act from the perspective of the Netherlands in the future. Old Count Louis didn't think there were too many benefits to Sweden. Of course, Karl XVI seemed to be pro-Dutch, but he actually had his own plans. William IV took in the subtle changes in Old Count Louis and understood it in his heart. As a major Nordic country, Sweden naturally has its own pride. Old Count Louis has served as the Swedish Prime Minister of Justice for 2 terms. If history is correct, this old guy will be successfully re-elected twice in the future and will be in power until 1880. He is also the first Swedish Prime Minister after the Prime Minister of Justice and the Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs were merged into one in 1876, so his influence is quite large. It's not a good thing if someone shows signs of being unfriendly to the Netherlands, right, Prime Minister? Old Count Louis' old eyes moved slightly, and he smiled. That's right. Sweden doesn't want to be remembered either, so our King Carl XVI has always advocated cooperation between the Netherlands and Sweden to create a prosperous relationship between the two countries. William IV seemed very happy and said, I also think that cooperation is the most fundamental relationship between countries, so I urged an alliance with Sweden at the beginning. Unexpectedly, His Majesty Carl XVI agreed very much. Old Count Louis, if the Netherlands can help Sweden develop a strong navy, then the Netherlands will benefit greatly. Sweden can work with the Netherlands to deal with Britain on the sea. William IV, but Sweden does lack talents in the shipping industry, so I am willing to help Sweden develop, but the premise is that Sweden needs shipbuilding experts and talents. Sweden currently has shortcomings in this regard. Old Count Louis, what if Sweden hires Dutch experts to conduct training in Stockholm? William IV, it is possible, but the Dutch shipbuilding headquarters are all in the Far East, which is more secretive. Technically, Ian is the most advanced there. Of course, the labor cost there is also the highest. I am afraid that the Swedish economy cannot afford such a large amount of money. Old Count Louis did not give up and asked, what if Sweden issues national debt? William IV smiled slightly. That's possible, but it must be issued by the Netherlands. You know, the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands is not good, and the pound is unreliable, isn't it? Finally got what he wanted. Chapter 514 The Voice of Berlin. 1869. Although the British fleet in the same area tried its best to obstruct and threaten, in order to avoid a direct naval battle with the Netherlands, at the last minute, the Dutch fleet finally landed in the northern Spanish port city of Gijón, escorted by a fleet of the Dutch battleship Rotterdam, led by a team of members of the Dutch House of Representatives Speaker Huntington. As the news spread, Europe was shocked. The navies of Britain, France, Spain and the Netherlands are still hovering in the area. Obviously, they are all waiting to see what Huntington will say after landing in Spain, and then take the next step after receiving orders from their own countries. At the same time, the Swedish Prime Minister of Justice, Count Louis the Elder, visited Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and made it clear to the other side that Sweden agrees with the Netherlands' diplomatic position and does not believe that Huntington's visit to Spain will cause any harm to Britain, because it is in line with the normal visits of a sovereign state. I don't think there's anything wrong with Speaker Huntington's visit, because this great Dutch speaker also visited Stockholm, Sweden last year. We warmly welcomed him in the Swedish House of Representatives. He is a very great politician. On the same day, the Spanish government held a welcoming ceremony for Huntington. The Speaker of the Spanish House of Representatives, Julian, personally went to the port of Gijón to greet Huntington. The two held talks that night, but no one knew the content of the talks, which inevitably led to a lot of speculation. In addition, the French Empire seemed to be stimulated and launched a more fierce attack on the Cambodian region of the Siamese Empire in the Far East. At present, more than two-thirds of the territory in Cambodia has fallen into the hands of France. The Laos region in the north of the Kingdom of Siam was also occupied by France because of its westward attack in the direction of North Vietnam. Almost one-third of Laos territory was occupied by France. This made people feel that France seemed to be moving faster and faster towards victory, and it seemed that the balance was pressing more and more towards the French Empire. We strongly condemn the United Kingdom's hesitation in supporting the Kingdom of Siam. In recent months, the United Kingdom's position has retreated and it no longer provides the strong support to the Kingdom of Siam from the Malay Peninsula. This is very disappointing to us. Obviously, as a world power, the United Kingdom seems to have retreated on humanitarian issues. This is an insult to a great power that shouts every day that a balanced strategy is for world peace and European peace. We call on Britain to stand on the side of history, not the opposite. The International Red Cross firmly supports the rescue work of the victim country, the Kingdom of Siam. We have received financial support from all over the world to maintain the operation of the organization and save the dying and the wounded. Once again, we also call on Napoleon III to stop his aggression against other countries, because there is a popular saying in the Far East, which is called today's cause, tomorrow's result. The aggression imposed on others by the French Empire today will sooner or later befall itself, according to the Buddhist saying. El Baradei, the first Director General of the International Red Cross, said, "Peace is hard-won. I hope Napoleon III will cherish it." Bismarck and other Prussian high-ranking officials in Berlin looked strange, but their expressions changed when they heard El Baradei's appeal. Under such circumstances, Bismarck accepted an interview from the European Times. Finally, when Bismarck was asked about this issue by a reporter, and when asked about his comment on El Baradei's statement, he could only say meaningfully, "The speech of the International Red Cross is very vivid. Prussia is very interested in it, but to be honest, what he said has aroused the recognition of many Prussians. We Prussians also think that the French actions in the Far East are a bit excessive, but we will not impose economic sanctions on France, unlike the Netherlands, because we are a big country. When doing things, we need to take into account the national interests of Prussia, rather than being impatient and quick to speak." Reporter. Bismarck, however, "We are very interested in the visit of Huntington, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, to Spain." Reporter. "What is your opinion on this, Mr. Prime Minister?" Bismarck. "I think my opinion is similar to that of the Swedish Prime Minister, Count Louis the Elder. We do not think that the Netherlands' actions are an offense to Britain, because it seems that Huntington has not done anything that is harmful to British interests. Of course, if there is, that is another matter." Reporter. "Does it mean that the Prime Minister supports his visit to Spain?" Bismarck. "I think this is a concept of replacing the original with a new one, because the proposition from the beginning is that there is nothing wrong with the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives visiting Spain. The UK is afraid of Huntington's past support for Spain's position on Gibraltar, so it opposes the visit, right? Therefore, I think the visit itself is not a problem. The problem is the content published after the visit." Reporter. "Does it mean that Sir Bismarck thinks that Prussia is observing whether he will provoke Britain next, which is the correct judgment?" Bismarck. "Yes, I think both London and Paris have this idea, which is why the British fleet finally gave up blocking Speaker Huntington from landing outside the port of Gijón." Reporter. "What does the Prime Minister think of the relationship between Prussia and the Netherlands?" Bismarck. "Eat when you should eat and drink when you should drink. This is our evaluation." Reporter. Bismarck. "To put it simply, Prussia has treated the Netherlands in a friendly manner from the very beginning. We used to have a close relationship, but we also went through a period of aversion, and now everything seems to be back on track. Therefore, the current relationship between the two countries cannot be said to be close, but there is no hostility either." Reporter. "Is the competition between Prussia and the Netherlands in North America still going on?" Bismarck. "The world is struggling for competitiveness every day. I conclude that people destroy nature for survival, just like weeding when farming, which is also unfair to the grass. The healthy competition between Prussia is actually understandable. You know, the relationship between Britain and France has eased, but Britain and France are still competing for the English Channel. Of course, the two countries have still carried out a lot of cooperation. For example, it is said that Britain and France have started many dialogues on the Spanish issue." Reporter. "Can you talk about the details of the cooperation?" Bismarck. "I'm sorry, it's confidential. I can't tell you." Reporter. "Is there any possibility of cooperation between the Netherlands and Prussia at present? What we are interested in is, what is the current relationship between Prussia and the Netherlands?" Bismarck. "The Netherlands is our friend. We were allies in 1862, at least on the issue of Africa. We have a pleasant cooperation between the two sides. As for the relationship, I can only tell you that the relationship between Berlin and Amsterdam is not as bad as everyone, including you, thinks. We often talk about cooperation with each other's ambassadors." Reporter. "Cooperation? Recently? Can you talk about what kind of cooperation there is?" How would Prime Minister Bismarck answer the reporter's question about the cooperation between the Netherlands and Prussia? Chapter 515, Global Exhibition of Talented Painters? Kingdom of the Netherlands, Amsterdam. Similarly, how would King William IV of the Netherlands respond to a reporter from the European Times asking about the cooperation between the Netherlands and Prussia? William IV. "I can't tell you the details of the cooperation between Prussia and the Netherlands, but if I want to talk about the general direction, then I can only say that we are conducting oil exploration in the Netherlands and the United Arab Emirates region in the Middle East and the Prussian Cutter Peninsula. We have already obtained results. We have used the newly established Dutch oil exploration and production company Shell Oil Company to discover oil in these two places. We are currently cooperating on the possibility of further development. Reporter, that is really a great discovery. I believe that not only me, but the whole of Europe will not be able to sleep because of this. William IV, yes, you know, oil has begun to be used vigorously. Many countries such as Britain, France, Austria, referring to Austria-Hungary, are still obsessed with using coal to continue to support their industrialization, but there are some countries, such as our Kingdom of Prussia, the Netherlands, the United States of America and other newly emerging and revived countries, all use oil as a new energy source to replace coal in the future to develop their own industries, so oil exploration has become an important industrial resource project for the Netherlands, Prussia, the United States and other countries. At present, the Netherlands, Prussia and the United States, led by the Netherlands, have been fully promoting the improvement of machine stomach medicine for oil. Our electrification has also made great progress. Reporter, is this what the Prime Minister just said, the cooperation between Prussia and the Netherlands? Bismarck, can't that be called it? Reporter, of course, but in this way, Britain, France, Austria, the Netherlands, and the United States will become two major camps because of energy issues. Will this become a template for the future political landscape? William IV, I don't know, but we know that in terms of resource utilization, Britain and France have the most available coal resources, so the Netherlands, Prussia, and the United States need to provide a more unique resource than them. It's not about replacing, but about adding new resources. Reporter, in other words, in terms of coal resources, the Netherlands, Prussia, and the United States cannot compete with Britain, so the Netherlands, Prussia, and the United States need to start in other areas, right? William IV, you can say that, you are really smart, you know, when people face their own shortcomings, they should not complain about themselves, but should find their strengths in other aspects as their own means. Reporter, just like Britain and France watched coal steam engines dominate the first industrial revolution, the Netherlands, Prussia, and the United States seem to want to break this process? Or find another way. William IV, so I said you are very smart. There is nothing unchanging in this world. Therefore, we will not easily think that it is advisable to go down the same path to the end. Coal resources may be exhausted one day, and the sky in London is foggy and uncomfortable because of too much coal consumption. So we need to break the big Dutch cities such as Amsterdam, Rotterdam or Sydney and Melbourne to become another London, because the acid rain there is said to be not very friendly to the human body, so we need to make our own plan for this. Reporter, so the Netherlands, Prussia and the United States under the leadership of Your Majesty chose oil. William IV, oil is cleaner. Reporter, but it is more difficult to mine than coal, isn't it? William IV, this is undeniable, but oil can also be more convenient to transport because it covers a small area. Reporter, but it is said to be more prone to fire and explosion. William IV, everything has its pros and cons. Nothing is perfect. Reporter, if relations with Prussia improve, what does Your Majesty think the Netherlands needs to do now? William IV, I don't think we need to do anything, really, because the Netherlands and Prussia are both very pragmatic countries. We are moving in the direction of cooperation and competition. You know, even partners sometimes have conflicts. Therefore, the benign competition between the Netherlands and Prussia is in line with market laws and the political ecological environment. I don't think that the intensity of the Tory and Whig elections in London, England, will be a moment of division within the UK. Reporter, the Netherlands and Spain are also holding midterm elections this year. I would like to ask Your Majesty, what do you think of the huge disturbance caused by Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain? William IV, it may not be a huge storm. The Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, Huntington, is a relatively professional member of Parliament. I have a deep memory of him. I don't think he is hostile to Britain, because I met him not long ago. Although Huntington sometimes expresses dissatisfaction with Britain, he is not ridiculing Britain, but is anxious for Britain's development and hopes that Britain will change and continue to develop and move forward. From this, I think Huntington is just overly concerned about Britain and has not explained his ideas to everyone, so there are certain misunderstandings. Reporter, Your Majesty, your so-called misunderstanding is the reason for Britain's current concerns, but the Dutch government does not seem to have explained this misunderstanding to Britain. I wonder if the Netherlands has explained to Britain about this. William IV, I don't think the Dutch cabinet government needs to do anything, because whoever is responsible should be responsible for solving the problem. The person who tied the bell should be the one to untie it, right? Reporter, but looking at the current situation of Speaker Huntington, it seems that this incident may not happen soon. William IV, I think you will have a timetable. You know, the Netherlands is a country with separation of powers. The cabinet government and administrative departments cannot put pressure on the parliament. I think the British side can understand the difficulties of Prime Minister Thorbecke. Reporter, after listening to Your Majesty's words, it seems that everything seems to be the case, but I always feel that something is wrong. William IV, this is the fact. I think the fact that the UK has allowed Huntington Landing to proceed is the best proof. Reporter, Your Majesty, what are the development goals of the Netherlands in the next few years? William IV, I naturally hope to be comprehensive and develop the Netherlands with all my strength, but it seems a little impossible, right? Seriously speaking, I am most concerned about the economic development of the Netherlands in the Far East, as well as cultural development. Therefore, today we will provide many measures to help develop the cultural dissemination of the Netherlands in the development of the latter. Reporter, cultural dissemination? What are the specific ones? William IV, of course, for example, the Dutch painter Van Gogh, who has recently become famous internationally, will hold a global exhibition of new paintings in the Netherlands and the Far East, and the Dutch government will provide full support. Reporter, is it Vincent William van Gogh, the genius painter who shocked the world with his works full of natural compassion and suffering awareness at the age of 17? Chapter 516, Why is Your Majesty so optimistic about the Far East? The European Times reporter's exclusive interview with William IV continues. William IV, Vincent William van Gogh is indeed a talented young man. He is currently a rising star in the Dutch and even the entire European art world. Therefore, the Netherlands needs to provide him with a national and world-class stage for him to shine. Reporter, that is very exciting. Your Majesty's so-called Dutch cultural dissemination should not be limited to here, right? William IV, of course, we will also hold a literary works competition and set up awards. The venue is in Sydney. Reporter, but at present, the Dutch literary authors seem to be somewhat behind those of major countries, such as Britain and France. Is this true? William IV, no, we currently have a lot of immigrants in the country, such as the 34-year-old Mark Twain who immigrated from the United States to the Far East of the Netherlands some time ago, and Strindberg from Sweden, who is only 20 years old and is currently rising in the Netherlands like Van Gogh, a rising star of drama and literature. Reporter, in this way, the Netherlands seems to have a unique appeal in attracting international talents. May I ask Your Majesty, how can the Netherlands attract so many top international talents to settle in the Netherlands? William IV, first, the economic development of the Netherlands is the best in the world. You know, the income of Dutch residents has surpassed that of the UK several years ago. It is really disposable income. Reporter, that's absolutely true. The Netherlands has become the best place for citizens of many European countries, especially Eastern Europe, to work, because the labor wage income in the Netherlands is several times higher than that in China, and even more than 10 times that of the Russian Empire. It is also 5 times that of Sweden in Northern Europe, 3 times that of Spain, Portugal and other countries in Southern Europe, 2.5 times that of Prussia and Austria-Hungary, 2 times that of France, and 1.5 times that of the UK. Therefore, the Netherlands has become the biggest feature of attracting talents with its wage income level. William IV, that's right, but you may not have noticed a problem. Reporter, I don't know what problem Your Majesty is referring to. William IV, in fact, these top talents did not immigrate to the Netherlands, but all lived in the Far East of the Netherlands, especially on the Australian continent. For example, the inventor of the most patents in the world today has become Edison, who lives in Sydney. These people choose to live and start businesses in the Far East and have found ways to give full play to their own characteristics. Reporter, is the Far East really that good? William IV, the Far East is really that good. At present, the improvement of transportation in the Far East is still in progress. Just for the Australian continent, under the strong promotion of senior officials from various provinces, the construction of interprovincial railways has been completed and put into use. The roads have been used as early as a few years ago. The horse-drawn carriages popular in the Far East are almost divided into left and right directions, which has become the biggest highlight of the road. The road is more than 60 meters wide and 30 meters wide in both directions. The road is repaired flat and neat. Equestrian competitions, bicycle competitions, race walking competitions, etc. are held on the roads in the Far East. This is not currently done in the Netherlands. It is changing every day. It seems that it is a paradise for innovation. It is precisely because it is the most active place for innovative technology in the world that many top talents are reluctant to leave after going there. You know, when you go to a place that makes you full of inspiration and allows you to create your own proud works, then for yourself, it will be unforgettable, and it can be said to be a second home. Reporter: Your Majesty seems to be very enthusiastic about the Far East. William IV: That's called a special liking. Reporter: But Your Majesty, don't you seem a little too persistent? William IV: No, I think that's taking advantage of the situation. Reporter: William IV: The Netherlands has a small land area and is surrounded by big countries. The situation in Europe has been in constant conflict for hundreds of years. The Netherlands has also been one of the countries that has harmed other countries or been harmed by other countries. From its independence in Spain, to its defeat by Britain, which was originally weaker than it, and its overseas colonies being divided up, all these have made the Netherlands realize that the Netherlands is very vulnerable when facing these powerful neighbors in different periods. Really, it can almost be said that if the Netherlands relies solely on its own land to resist invasions from various countries, it will eventually become a delicacy on the plate of others after the destruction of its country, just like during the Napoleon I period. Reporter: So Your Majesty feels that the land is too small and the depth is not enough to stop the invasion of various countries? The sense of crisis made Your Majesty decide to establish a second life in the Far East for the Netherlands. William IV: It's good to say it's a second life, but it's more accurate to say that the Far East will be the base for the Netherlands to fight back against invaders after the Netherlands is attacked. Reporter: Can the Far East shoulder this responsibility? William IV: In my opinion, it is already capable of doing so. Reporter: What makes Your Majesty so confident? Do you think the area there is larger? William IV: Yes, the mainland area of the Netherlands is less than 50,000 square kilometers, but the area measured there is more than 10 million square kilometers. In terms of depth, the world is currently only second to the Russian Empire and the British Empire. More importantly, we are an archipelago of our own, while there are a large number of countries around the United Kingdom and the Russian Empire. Therefore, our geographical location is unique in this regard. Of course, the large area is not the only reason. Reporter: William IV: The economic construction of the Netherlands in the Far East has also entered the fast lane. The current per capita income there has reached a level similar to that of Britain and France. Reporter: What about the natives? Could it be that the income of white Dutch people is 20 times that of the natives, and the natives only reach that level after being averaged out? Your Majesty should know that this can easily bring the poor to the level of the rich. William IV: What you said is very strange, but it also sounds very reasonable. I think this question is very well asked. However, what I want to say is that there is a gap between the indigenous people and the Dutch whites. Although the local government is working hard to help the indigenous people, this cannot be accomplished overnight. Therefore, although it is not as exaggerated as 20 times as you said, it has reached more than 3 times. Reporter: 3 times? That's not bad. William IV: So the task is arduous. At present, the Far East has a rapidly developing economy. Everyone has opportunities and jobs are everywhere. It's just that if you want to work, there is no problem finding one. Reporter: A place where you can find jobs and the unemployment rate is a place where I will be tempted to immigrate. Your Majesty, how long do you think it will take for the Far East to reach the same level of development as ours? William IV: It should be within 5 years, and no later than 10 years. Chapter 517, The Netherlands has no colonies? Reporter from European Times: Your Majesty is so optimistic about the Far East. William IV: It's not a question of being optimistic or not, but the resources there give them this advantage: convenient water transportation, and the common railways in Europe, especially Western Europe, have been put into use one after another. The archipelago shipping routes in the northern Dutch East Indies and so on have created a maritime hub, all of which provide the necessary infrastructure for economic development there. In addition, a large amount of local Dutch capital is currently transferring assets or investing a lot of money there to help development. At present, it has become a hot spot for investment and construction, like a snowball. At present, capital from countries such as Europe and the United States has also begun to look favorably on it. While increasing immigration, it has also driven an investment boom. Reporter, the economy is developing so fast, and seeing that Your Majesty is so confident, the key is, how is the defense work there? Your Majesty should know that the world is in chaos at present, and all countries are ambitious, and there are many ambitious people. Therefore, if there is not enough power to defend their property and citizens, governments will face the risk of their assets being seized by others. William IV, in this regard, the Netherlands has actually already deployed. At present, the size of the Dutch Navy in the Indian Ocean and Pacific regions has surpassed that of the mainland, and the fleet tonnage has also surpassed that of the mainland, and the size is about the same as that of Portugal at present. As for the size of the army, it is almost on par with the mainland, and is about the same as the Portuguese army. Reporter, in other words, the Netherlands has now reached the scale of Portugal in terms of both army and navy in the Far East. William IV, you can think so. After all, we currently have a Dutch white population of more than 6 million. Next year, under the guidance of policies, with more children, international immigration and local Dutch immigration, the population should exceed 7 million. Reporter, what is the definition of indigenous people? William IV, the Netherlands is a country that does not exclude indigenous people. Therefore, many people who have lived in the Far East of the Netherlands can see that the indigenous people there are very docile. Of course, they are also very Dutch. It is actually more appropriate for us to call them Dutch indigenous people. Reporter, natives of the Netherlands. William IV, yes, they are the Dutch. Reporter, will this cause dissatisfaction among the white Dutch people? Your Majesty should know that the customs of the indigenous people are different from those of the white Dutch people. William IV, but they are also Protestantizing. Of course, more importantly, their king is me, and the object of their loyalty is also me and the Kingdom of the Netherlands. At this point, it is enough. Reporter, there are more than 10 million indigenous people in the Far East. It is said that some of them have been relocated to Kenya, Tanzania and Deep Congo in Africa. The British newspaper Financial Times said that some people suspect that Your Majesty has ulterior motives. What do you think of such a statement? William IV, in this world, there is nothing that is not suspected by someone. When you look at what others do with an alternative eye, you are actually looking at others with ulterior motives. What I want to say is that they have been unfair to the parties involved from the beginning, so I don't care about this point of view. I don't think those people in the British government will care about this either. After all, Britain's overseas colonies have always used direct and rough practices, which have caused many parts of the world to enter a state of war and disaster. Reporter, Your Majesty, do you indicate that you are dissatisfied with Britain's overseas colonial policy? William IV, no, I just speak my mind. I feel that the Netherlands has some shortcomings. Reporter, William IV, if possible, I think the Netherlands can use Britain as a mirror to find its own shortcomings. Reporter, are you learning from Britain's so-called rough colonial rule policy? William IV, haha, the Netherlands has no colonies, only territories. As long as the Netherlands rules, it is Dutch territory, just like the mainland. I am thinking about how to make the word colony disappear from the Dutch territory. Reporter, Your Majesty is really humorous. William IV, why do you say that? Reporter, currently Europe and the world are full of the word colony. I think it will be difficult for it to disappear, right? William IV, that's why I said disappear in the Netherlands. Reporter, okay. Your Majesty, what do you think Prussia's attitude will be towards the Netherlands at present? At present, Prussia has annexed all countries of the German Confederation except Austria. I heard that His Majesty William I and Bismarck and other ministers have completed the integration policy and taken over so many territories and populations. In recent years, Prussia's strength has greatly increased. Prussia, which originally had an advantage over the Netherlands, is now more pressured by the Netherlands. In this case, what attitude do you think the Netherlands should have towards Prussia? William IV, this is a good question. In my opinion, Prussia's current national strength is actually more stressful than France's pressure on the Netherlands. After all, France's consumption in the Far East has reduced France's domestic strength a lot, while Prussia has been quietly integrating in recent years, and the effect is currently significant. Therefore, as you said just now, with its soaring strength, Prussia is putting pressure on the Netherlands. However, as for the expansion of its advantage over the Netherlands, it is not necessarily the case. I don't agree with this point. Reporter, what does your majesty mean by this? William IV, because while Prussia was expanding, the Netherlands was also developing in the Far East. You might ask how the 7 million Dutch and 10 million natives in the Far East can be compared with the more than 50 million people after the integration of Prussia. But I would say that this is not a question of population, but a question of the degree of security integration. Reporter. William IV, to explain further, the Far East belongs to the Netherlands, and the natives actually prefer to integrate with the Dutch? But Prussia forced itself to integrate with others, so the internal situation seems to be quiet now. In fact, who knows if there will be a rebound one day? I think Bismarck and others should also be concerned about this. Reporter, Your Majesty, you are saying that there may be a risk that the original countries in Prussia will break free from the control of the Prussian government, posing a hidden danger. William IV, it's not a possibility, but a certainty. No one likes their country to be destroyed and then ruled by others. I think the whole world is the same on this point. Reporter, is the Netherlands not worried about Prussia? William IV, wrong, on the contrary, I am more worried about the situation in the Netherlands. Reporter, isn't the threat smaller because of Prussia's internal integration? Why are you more worried? Chapter 518, like Shakespeare, the British have a rich imagination. Reporter, isn't it because the Kingdom of Prussia is internally unstable and has tied up a lot of internal government power, so other countries should be more assured? William IV, no, I think it's just the opposite. It is precisely because of internal problems that Prussia may take risks and launch a war to divert its target. Doing so will unite the patriotic forces at home and increase the pride of Greater Prussia's identity. This is what I am most worried about. Reporter, Your Majesty, do you think Prussia will set its sights on the Netherlands? William IV, why not? Reporter, I thought Prussia would set its sights on Denmark, because the whole world knows that Prussia did this last time, and also gained control of Schleswig and Holstein, and even cheated the Kingdom of Austria. William IV, it was like this last time, but it doesn't mean it's the same this time. In fact, many people suspect that the target will be the Austro-Hungarian Empire where Austria is, but Prussia's target should not be it. Reporter, if Your Majesty were Bismarck, who would Your Majesty think would be more beneficial to Prussia to attack? William IV, haha, if we are sure of winning the war, I think the best choice is the British Empire, because the British Empire was defeated by Prussia. In front of Prussia, a powerful army that has incorporated the British Empire's navy, the rest of the countries can only bow their heads. Reporter, including the French Empire. William IV, I don't think the French Empire is an exception. Reporter, back to the topic just now, Dutch speaker Huntington visited Spain. I mean hypothetically, if he declared support for Spain on the disputed territorial sovereignty of Gibraltar between Britain and Spain, what kind of opposition measures will the Netherlands encounter from Britain? William IV, assuming it succeeds, I don't think Britain will take too many actions, because this is not in line with Britain's usual behavior. Reporter, what does Your Majesty mean by usual behavior? William IV, Britain doesn't like to talk to other countries with words, but prefers direct and effective actions. Prime Minister Talbot has hinted several times that Huntington does not represent the Dutch government, but only represents himself. I think Britain, as a country with the same system as us, will understand the language we imply. Reporter, but the people in London are angry. The British government may take advantage of the situation to take unfavorable actions against the Netherlands. William IV, you also said that this is a hypothetical issue. Of course, it is possible that the worst-case scenario is planned as you said. But I think the British-Israeli government will have a response plan. Reporter, what if it really happens? What plan does the Netherlands have to deal with British countermeasures? William IV, if that is the case, I think the plan that the Thorbecke government has prepared can be used. Reporter, Your Majesty, are you saying that Prime Minister Thorbecke has already developed a response plan? William IV, yes, and the plan is lying still on my desk. Reporter, my God, does that mean that you and Prime Minister Thorbecke have anticipated the consequences of everything that happened? William IV, there is nothing we can do about it. There is separation of powers. Sometimes, as the executive branch, Thorbecke doesn't like Parliament interfering in diplomacy, but he won't stop it from happening because he doesn't have the right, and the Dutch constitution protects the power of the speaker. Reporter, but Your Majesty, as the commander-in-chief of the three armed forces of the Netherlands and the highest authorizer of government departments, The Supreme Court and Parliament, Your Majesty, has a binding effect on them, and all legislation needs your consent and signature to take effect. Your Majesty has the greatest influence on them. In this case, if Your Majesty comes forward, I think Speaker Huntington should not leave the Netherlands and go to Spain again. I think many people in the UK think so. William IV, but in this way, I have set a precedent for violating the Constitution. Yes, as a king, I can legally exercise some special powers. And as you said, I can stop it. But if I have to dissuade them, then in the future, can I stop the actions of every head of government, speaker, and president of the Supreme Council? In this way, I, as the king, will be faced with interfering in the administration, judiciary, and parliament, which will become the source of chaos in the Dutch control. Reporter, maybe the British don't think so. William IV, the Netherlands does not need to be responsible for British opinions. Therefore, at this point, I think if Huntington represents an individual, then it is even more difficult for me to intervene in the views he wants to express. Just as I am reluctant to condemn the Bismarck government when it annexed the German Confederation, I think it will make things worse. You know, now I will not directly criticize Napoleon III for launching a war in the Kingdom of Siam in the Far East, because I think it is more appropriate for the professional Prime Minister Thorbecke's cabinet government to do it. Reporter, the British will think that Your Majesty or Prime Minister Thorbecke is playing a double act with Speaker Huntington, one to ease the situation and the other to launch an advance against Britain. Is this correct? William IV, you said that the British said that. In fact, I think the Netherlands is doing the most peaceful thing for the whole world. Reporter, William IV, because we have been avoiding wars in recent years. On the contrary, Britain has been defeated again and again. Reporter, William IV, it is because the British have such a rich imagination that we have such great writers as Charles Dickens, who wrote David Copperfield, The Pickwick Papers, A Tale of Two Cities, Oliver Twist, and The Old Curiosity Shop, Elizabeth Gaskell, who wrote Mary Barton, Ruth, and North and South, and Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Shirley and the Schoolmaster. William Shakespeare, one of the greatest writers in Europe, was born. I can only say that many British people are too smart, but sometimes their imagination goes too far. Reporter, so, the Netherlands is not engaging in a double act. William IV, even if they did, I would not participate in it. Reporter, Your Majesty is really humorous. Will Britain be so angry that it will launch an extreme counterattack against the Netherlands? William IV, if Britain really thinks it is necessary, then I think the Netherlands will have a response plan. As I said just now, Prime Minister Thorbecke's plan is on my desk. Reporter, what plan? William IV, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't answer your question. Reporter, well, Your Majesty just mentioned Napoleon III, and also mentioned the issue of France's invasion of the Far East colony of South Vietnam and the Cambodia region of the Kingdom of Siam in the Far East. I would like to ask Your Majesty, what is the current attitude of the Netherlands towards France? Chapter 519, Move the capital to Melbourne? European Times reporter Haig talks with King William IV of the Netherlands. Reporter Haig, faced with a war launched by the French Empire in the Far East, the Netherlands led the members of the International Hague Court to launch sanctions against the French Empire. How does the Netherlands view the French Empire now? William IV, when Napoleon III met with me, he emphasized that the French Empire would not leave Mexico and North America and would not allow Britain, the Netherlands, or even Brazil to take advantage of the situation. But when Mexican President Benito Juárez visited the Netherlands and met with me some time ago, he complained to me that the French Empire ran from southern Mexico to the Far East, but gave the remaining territory to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In addition to the symbolic Miquelon Islands in eastern Canada, North America no longer has any French colonies. Reporter, William IV, the foreign policy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is to build bridges of communication and deal with various countries. The French Empire was previously an important trading partner, energy partner, and investment market of the Netherlands. There is no mutual exclusion between the Netherlands and the French Empire. Reporter, what about now? William IV, currently, trade between the Netherlands and the French Empire has almost stopped, and investment has almost stagnated. Reporter, some time ago, Napoleon III visited Milan. It was the first time that the French Empire visited a foreign country after launching the Siamese War. What do you think his purpose was? William IV, this is also the first time that France has visited southern Europe since the war. The purpose is of course to break through the diplomatic and economic blockade of the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Reporter: why did France choose the Kingdom of Italy? William IV, the Ottoman Empire, Italy, and Spain are the three most powerful countries in the Mediterranean besides France. France currently has a bad relationship with Spain, and with the Ottoman Empire because the latter is close to the Russian Empire. France does not want to offend Britain, so it keeps its distance from the Ottoman Empire. Therefore, Italy is left. Reporter: will King Emmanuel II of Italy achieve the purpose of Napoleon II's visit? William IV, the public theme of the two is to discuss the situation in the Mediterranean, but in fact they each get what they need and just keep each other warm. To be more direct, they use each other to show their presence. Reporter: William IV, the French Empire suffered sanctions from the International Court of Justice in The Hague, so its international influence weakened, while Italy could only be isolated in the northern part of the central Mediterranean, and Emmanuel II also had to face the influence of the infiltration of the Vatican, which affected its own status and government control. Therefore, both countries were very passive and their economies were in trouble. Therefore, the two countries actually cooperated to a certain extent in strategy. They also agreed on the idea of strengthening bilateral communication. Obviously, Italy was eliminating France's negative thoughts about Italy's participation in the sanctions against the French Empire within the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Reporter: will France understand? William IV, Napoleon III naturally would not, but the international situation would make him choose to suppress it and pretend to understand. Reporter: does it mean that France and Italy can continue to cooperate? William IV, Emmanuel II was the first king of a member state of the International Court of Justice in The Hague to meet Napoleon II after the war. Although Italy followed the other countries of the Hague National Court to impose sanctions on France, it was limited to military, but there were no economic sanctions, and there were no restrictions on personnel exchanges between the two countries. Reporter: has Italy relaxed its sanctions? William IV, in fact, the organization does not force member states to impose sanctions to a certain extent, so the sanctions are carried out according to their respective needs. For example, Portugal only imposed sanctions on fish products from fishermen of the French Empire. Haha, the purpose is actually to prevent French fish products from competing with local products in this name. Reporter: what about the Netherlands? William IV, the Netherlands also relaxed its sanctions on some products. Among them, Dutch coal mining companies actually imported French coal from France, but we suppressed industrial products. Reporter: so everyone turned a blind eye to Italy's actions. William IV, that's basically what they said. Among them, Italy did not follow the Netherlands in imposing large-scale sanctions. In fact, Italy played a troublemaker role when the Netherlands and Portugal had a colonial war in Africa. In return, Napoleon III should have given Italy a big gift when negotiating arms with Emmanuel II and agreeing to allow Italy to import French warships. Reporter: will the good relationship between France and Italy affect other countries to follow suit? William IV, of course someone will be tempted. I guess Napoleon III values this very much. He wants to use Italy as a coordinator to ease the relationship between the International Court of Justice and The Hague in the coming period of time to coordinate the relationship between France and other countries, and indirectly enhance the international image of Emmanuel II in Italy. Reporter: will Italy accept the offer? William IV, it is not a question of whether to accept the offer or not. It is that Napoleon III, contrary to his usual behavior, arrived 3 minutes in advance to wait for the meeting in Milan, giving Emmanuel II enough face. Reporter: is the purpose of Napoleon III doing this to break the sanctions led by the Netherlands? William IV, Napoleon III is using Italy to contain the International Court of Justice in The Hague headed by the Netherlands, and it is also a statement to other major powers. Reporter: what can Italy gain by doing this? William IV, Italy is attacking the French Empire to bid on the Netherlands and other countries. Reporter: that's all. William IV, Italy is not doing well in Africa right now, especially in the Ethiopian colonial war a few years ago, where it was defeated by the local indigenous king, which made Emmanuel II lose face in front of the European royal families. Therefore, perhaps Emmanuel II, on the grounds that Italy's colonial territories in Africa are threatened, asked the French Empire to make concessions to Italy in the French colonies of Algeria and western Libya. Reporter: is Napoleon III willing? William IV, who knows, maybe he is willing. Reporter: well, some time ago, The Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire held a three-nation summit in Constantinople in the Ottoman Empire. What do you think of this, Your Majesty? William IV, the theme of the summit of the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire seems to be to jointly resolve disputes and then drive Britain and France out of the Middle East and the Balkans. However, this time the Austro-Hungarian Empire is a supporting role, and the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire are the protagonists. Reporter, does this mean that the three countries will form an alliance to fight against Britain, France and other foreign countries? William IV, that won't happen, at least I think so. The weakening influence of Britain and France, and the improvement of the strategic autonomy and voice of regional powers, do not mean that the situation in the Balkan Peninsula and the Middle East is safer. Because these three countries are not easy to deal with, each has its own ambitions, and no one will submit to the other. Reporter, then Your Majesty, how do you think the Netherlands should deal with it? William IV, the impact of the global food and security crisis on regional stability in various places cannot be underestimated. Although each country has a lot of security forces to protect its own interests from invasion by other countries, the chances of several hot powder kegs exploding are still very high. The North and South in North America seem to be calm at present, but in fact the situation is very strange. According to our intelligence, the Confederate States of America seems to have entered a period of turmoil because Robert Lee became the new president. The North may take some action. Whether this will lead to the intervention of Britain and others is still unknown. Moreover, with the intervention of Britain, the dissatisfaction of the North may be vented, and a reincarnation will cause Britain and the United States to fight again. This is very puzzling. Reporter, what other hotspots do you think, Your Majesty? William IV, on the Balkan Peninsula, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Kingdom of Greece currently have troops stationed. The Russian Empire also launches wars and attacks from time to time. With the anxiety of the Kingdom of Greece, the weapons of the Ottoman Empire have been upgraded, and the vitality of the Austro-Hungarian Empire has recovered after being defeated by Prussia. Although the Russian Empire, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire are now inclined to cooperate to ease relations, each country is not a reassuring master, so war is very likely to break out at any time. After all, when diplomacy and negotiations are insufficient, the use of force must be an option. Reporter. William IV, Spain and France are also in conflict at present. The two nations seem to be at odds. Although there seems to be no risk of war at present, mainly due to the previous border peace between the two countries, this historical peace border mechanism is still inevitably fragile. Reporter, Your Majesty, do you think there will be a huge conflict between Spain and France? William IV, I think anything is possible, of course, I just think. Reporter Haig, in the situation where the geopolitical landscape is being reshaped by regional powers, successful Dutch diplomacy must actively respond to the economic and political demands of countries in the region. It seems that Britain and France are currently unable to do this. In recent years, the Netherlands has proposed looking south and east, and has strengthened its attention in the Mediterranean and Africa. The Far East is a place that Your Majesty has repeatedly stated that it values. Although this will cause dissatisfaction and concern in some Mediterranean countries, most people just think that the Netherlands needs to promote a diversified and balanced diplomacy. Many people think that the Netherlands needs to keep a clear mind and strategic determination, and should not have too many illusions about this. It needs to be cautious when entering Africa and the Far East to avoid falling into the trap of powerful countries such as Britain and France. What do you think? William IV, I think that the Netherlands is currently focusing on the Far East in Africa, but we are also paying attention to any details of geopolitical changes in Europe. The homeland is the foundation of the Netherlands, and we will not give up the homeland. Reporter, but many Dutch people have begun to think that the focus should be placed on the Far East. The vast territory there is the dream of the Netherlands in the future. They even call it the Dutch dreamland. William IV, haha, this is a bit thorny, but I can't refute them if they think so. Reporter, why? William IV, because the Netherlands may, in the near future, follow public opinion and choose to move the capital of the Netherlands to the Far East. Reporter, oh my God, are you serious, Your Majesty? William IV, if public opinion agrees at that time, I think I will support this approach. Reporter, where will the new capital be? William IV, it should be in Melbourne, a southern city in Australia. Of course, it also needs to be decided by public opinion. Reporter Haig: well, thank your majesty for taking the time out of your busy schedule to allow me to conduct an exclusive interview. The European Times, and I wish your majesty all the best. William IV: thank you. Note: William IV heard that everyone said that the pace should be fast, and he also agreed. In this case, the pace will be accelerated later. I hope everyone will continue to support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520: Who is digging this pit? William IV's comments on current affairs, which were interviewed by Haig, the top reporter of the European Times, attracted the attention of the whole world. Everyone showed a complicated look after reading it. Even Napoleon III, who was visiting Milan, Italy, had his eyes rolling and repeated William IV's name in his heart. In France, the ministers looked inexplicably shocked. William IV actually publicly stated the purpose of Napoleon II's visit to Italy, which made everyone in Napoleon II's team who were visiting Milan blush. The Italian side also looked aggrieved. Obviously, if it was not made public, it would be fine. Once everyone's calculations were made public, everyone's faces were embarrassed. Many people were very angry with William IV, the big-mouthed king. You said you knew it, but it was not authentic to say it out. How can people continue to talk about it? In Prussia, many people were also happy about William IV's public discussion of Prussia, and there were many angry people. Even many high-ranking officials and nobles discussed this. Many people even asked the Prussian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to summon the Dutch ambassador to protest, but Bismarck finally suppressed it. In London, with the publication of the European Times, many people were also very dissatisfied with William IV's analogy in the interview that if Prussia wanted to grow, it could use Britain as a target. What was even more dissatisfied was that William IV did not publicly oppose the visit of the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington to Spain, and even called it personal freedom. This made the British, who have always been second to none, very dissatisfied, and felt that they were insulted. Therefore, it became the unanimous opinion of many people in Britain to try to pressure the Disraeli government to threaten the Netherlands and make the Dutch government change its course and stop expressing hostility to Britain. At the same time, in the Netherlands, many people were excited about William IV's domineering comments on the world situation, and followed him to look at the political situation in various regions of the world. They were also surprised that William IV publicly declared that he would choose to move the capital to Melbourne after looking at the effect of public opinion. Away from the mainland, move the capital to Melbourne, Australia in the Far East? This surprised many people in the Netherlands. Many people strongly opposed it, because this meant that the status of the European mainland might decline, and after the decline of their status, their current family focus was on the mainland, and they were vested interests. If the capital was moved to Melbourne, then William IV, as the initiator, would naturally move the seat of the royal family to the Far East. In this way, the mainland would be completely overwhelmed by the Far East politically. How could they bear this, who had always looked at the remote area of the Far East as if they were natives? This was simply a counterattack, and the one who was countered was not someone else, but themselves. Therefore, many people became dissatisfied. Not only in the mainland, but also in the Far East, many people were dissatisfied, including those in Jakarta, the capital of the Dutch East Indies. As the largest city in the Far East, Jakarta was the oldest colony in the Netherlands. Originally, as the representative of the Netherlands in the Far East, many companies and government departments were in Jakarta. However, after Britain transferred the Australian continent to the Netherlands in 1862, Jakarta's economic status was surpassed by Sydney, and its political status was replaced by Melbourne, not far from Sydney. Even the former Prime Minister Chancellor Van Hall was appointed as a senior official of the William province. He was also asked by William IV to do a good job in the construction of the deputy capital Melbourne and the corresponding industrial layout. More importantly, he also served as the deputy prime minister to assist Prime Minister Thorbecke in managing the Far East. This has shown that Melbourne's status in the Far East is equivalent to that of an acting capital. In fact, many people in Jakarta understand that this day will come sooner or later, but when King William IV said it, many people who were still lucky in Jakarta were suddenly disappointed. Obviously, Jakarta was completely eliminated. Needless to say, as the topic of William IV's relocation of the capital to Melbourne became more and more intense, capital and talents from the Dutch East Indies will flock to Sydney and Melbourne, and Jakarta will lag further behind Sydney economically, and will be more subservient to Melbourne politically in the future. This is the case in Jakarta, and so is the case in the Netherlands and Europe. Many people lament that in the future, Australia in the Far East will officially become the administrative and economic center of the Dutch overseas territory. Perhaps from William IV's hint, everyone can see where the best place to invest in the Netherlands is. London. Since the 4 naval battles with the Netherlands more than 100 years ago, this largest city in the UK has been out of control since then, replacing Amsterdam in the Netherlands and becoming the world's largest financial city. Because of the huge financial capital, the UK has also ushered in a period of rapid development. As the largest industrial area in the UK, the number of workers in London has already exceeded the 2 million mark, and the total population of the city has exceeded 5 million, making it the largest city in Europe. There are many contradictions in a society with a large population, which has created a hot soil space for various revolutions in Europe. Therefore, many movements in Europe started from London, and of course, Paris. However, it is precisely because of the innovation of these troublemakers in London that the British government has been able to understand the latest situation in the world and establish a complete system of the most advanced public opinion risk control. This is also the reason why Britain is the best country in Europe to practice constitutional monarchy. The financial position seized from the Netherlands allowed Britain to use financial capital to build itself and rise to become the most powerful country in Europe, but they still wanted greater benefits. So Britain continued to launch colonial wars, from North America to the northern subcontinent of the Indian Ocean and Africa, in order to obtain financial capital while also finding more industrial raw materials and expanding the industrial product market for Britain. Unfortunately, with the anti-British sentiment in Europe, Britain's industrial products seem to have been blocked, and the market of the American Federation in North America was originally a piece of fat meat, but now it has closed its doors. If new markets are not found, the factory warehouses of British capitalists will soon be full, and they can't wait. Moreover, the British government itself understands that if there is no way to open up the wealthy European market this time, it will be fatal to British industry, so the current situation in Europe is actually under the surveillance of the British government and big capitalists. Especially the latter, in order to put pressure on the Disraeli government and show that Disraeli could not protect their interests, these people did not hesitate to approach the Whig Party. Of course, this was limited to providing support secretly. They were unwilling to openly support the opposition party. It was under the connection of these capitalists that the opposition Whig Party led by Cleystone actually absorbed a lot of British MPs who had never joined the Whig Party and the Tory Party, and its seats in the House of Commons were getting closer to the Tory Party. This made the opposition party led by Cleystone seem to have a tool to clamp down on the ruling Tory Party. It was under such circumstances that the British Disraeli government made great adjustments to its foreign policy in order to find a way out for the capitalists of these large factories. Queen Victoria asked with concern, "You told me that Huntington's visit to Spain was an opportunity and an important reason for Britain to force the Netherlands to open up the market. It seems that there are some difficulties now, right?" Prime Minister Disraeli replied with confidence, "Don't worry, Barbie man, we have got the key to open the door. I am following it personally, and everything is going according to plan." Queen Victoria nodded. Since the Disraeli government came to power, Queen Victoria has been accustomed to Disraeli's confident actions. From the beginning, Disraeli reported to her that he deliberately made the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington's visit to Spain a big deal by anonymously investing information in the Spanish vanguard. Queen Victoria watched the situation develop in a state of acquiescence. Now the relationship between the Netherlands and Britain has indeed been in turmoil due to this incident. The provocative actions of the Netherlands are almost finalized, and Britain has become a victim. This gives Britain more reason to put pressure on the Netherlands, which brings the previously set goal one step closer. Queen Victoria glanced at Disraeli. Although this old man is not as powerful as the deceased Viscount Palmerston in terms of ability, he is not inferior in the use of conspiracy. In this regard, Foreign Secretary Russell is slightly inferior. Only Cleystone can compete with him in the Whig Party. Perhaps this is why Viscount Palmerston originally dug Cleystone from the Tory Party to the Whig Party. This incident uses Gibraltar to stir up the national sentiment of Spain. In addition to being easy to use and effective immediately, it also means to frame others. We need to firmly grasp the initiative and not let William IV and the Dutch government snatch it away. This is the usual method used by the British. If they succeed, they will make money. Even if they fail, it can be said that it is insignificant. Anyway, the contradictions between Britain and Spain on the issue of Gibraltar and after the naval battle against Spain have a long history. Now it is considered that there is no burden on the debt. As the helmsman of Britain, after 30 years of experience as the King of Britain, Queen Victoria has experienced countless conspiracies. She is still excited about the Opium War launched against that great power in the Far East in 1840. Although she personally does not oppose the Netherlands, and is even a supporter of the marriage between the Dutch and British royal families, it does not prevent her from supporting the Disraeli government to launch an attack on the Netherlands to safeguard the interests of Britain. In contrast, the Disraeli government has begun to pay attention to its eating habits. Unlike Viscount Palmerston, who forced sales and shocked the whole world at that time, it finds various reasons to deal with the Netherlands. This is not because Britain is kind, but because the balance of power in Europe seems to be about to break down. Britain needs to maintain its gentlemanly demeanor to make European countries relax their vigilance against Britain and temporarily restrain their extreme means. Britain's restraint now highlights the unreasonableness of the Netherlands, which allows Britain to maintain a good international reputation. Britain, the world's maritime hegemon, cannot rely solely on military force. More often, it needs to use diplomatic means to solve problems. At this time, the British government in London needs to hide its strength, although no one will underestimate Britain's strength at the beginning. Queen Victoria, be steady in the intensity. I don't want to affect Princess Louise's marriage to Crown Prince Frederick of Greece in October. Prime Minister Disraeli paused and said, yes. Chapter 521, Counterattack London. 1869, the undercurrents between Britain, the Netherlands and Spain caused by Speaker Huntington's visit to Spain were surging. At this time, Britain behaved very gentlemanly and proposed to the Netherlands to solve the problem through negotiations. Naturally, the Dutch government would not object to this. The negotiations were not very smooth. The Dutch government asked the British government to lift the score of British warships in northern Spain, but was rejected. The negotiations seemed to be deadlocked. However, the negotiations did not seem to affect the visit of Dutch Speaker Huntington, who was visiting Spanish territory, and his visit is still ongoing. In addition to meeting with the Prime Minister and the Queen in Madrid, Huntington was invited by the House of Representatives and the Senate in Spain to give speeches in these two parliaments respectively. In them, he talked a lot, talking most about the feelings of the Netherlands for Spain and the support of the Netherlands for Spain, and hinted that he would push the Dutch government to provide Spain with the most advanced weapons support in the House of Representatives so that Spain could resist the pressure from Britain, France and other countries. Huntington's approach was greatly welcomed in Spain. Whether from the Spanish people or the government, he represented the symbol of friendship between the Netherlands and Spain. His actions were soon reflected to the representatives of Britain and the Netherlands at the negotiation table. It seemed that the British position softened slightly due to Huntington's popularity in Spain. The Netherlands took this as an opportunity to take a step forward against Britain and made some excessive demands. As a result, this excessive demand, after being informed by Disraeli, actually aroused the anger of Queen Victoria, who never liked to get angry. Is the Netherlands crazy? How dare they make this request? Queen Victoria sneered. Good William IV, the lord of the Nassau family, actually achieved his goal here. She turned to Disraeli and said, "What do you think of your cabinet government?" Disraeli knew that this scene would appear when he first heard the news. Because the request made by the Netherlands was too excessive, he felt it was very absurd the first time he heard it. The Netherlands dared to make this request. Wasn't he afraid that Queen Victoria of Britain, who had always been pro-Dutch, would turn against him? I am still hesitating now. Seeing Queen Victoria's concerned look, he secretly moved in his heart and immediately had a plan, so he said calmly, "Our current idea is to reject politely and test the other party's bottom line at the same time." Perhaps seeing Queen Victoria, who was already on the verge of anger, was about to speak, Disraeli hurriedly said, "We can use this to test the Netherlands' more demands and then formulate countermeasures." Queen Victoria heard this and suppressed her anger. He said, "You will see, anyway, I will not let the Kingdom of Belgium disappear, this is my bottom line." A few days ago, the world news was almost all about his interview with the European Times. Looking at the world map he made, William IV sighed. It seems that the Netherlands occupies a large piece of territory, but it is actually far away from Europe. This is equivalent to being isolated overseas. The economy may not be able to develop very fast. At least because of transportation, the Australian continent and the Dutch East Indies will increase a lot of transportation costs in the export economy to various countries. Looking at the current negotiations in London, it seems that the Netherlands has the upper hand, which is actually dangerous. The Netherlands seems to be advancing in the direction of Spain and has launched a diplomatic offensive against Britain. It seems that Britain is backing down, but in fact it is very likely that Britain is planning some means of counterattack. The Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs has joined hands with Huntington in Parliament to move forward, and resources are inevitably dispersed. Britain may be grasping the purpose of the Netherlands and preparing to evaluate the gains and losses of the counterattack against the Netherlands. The British Navy is the best in the world, and it seems to be stuck in Spain. If it moves to the Netherlands, then the Netherlands' current seemingly superiority will no longer exist. After all, the hinterland of the Netherlands is too small, and the threat of the British Navy to the Netherlands can be said to be direct and rough, and the Netherlands will also feel extremely painful. Although Britain is now cooperating with the Netherlands to choose Spain as the battle venue, making Spain a lever for the Netherlands to fight against Britain, this is the same as Britain cooperating with the Netherlands to go to the British opponent to ask for trouble, which is no different from going deep into the enemy country. Obviously, only the British who are skilled and bold dare to do this. Foreign Minister Hespet Van reported, "Your Majesty, I just received news that the British-Israeli government rejected our proposal to return Belgium to the Netherlands, and also expressed dissatisfaction with the Netherlands' ambitions. It named Queen Victoria and was very angry. For this reason, it asked the Netherlands not to have any more delusions. Britain is even ready to support the Belgian royal family and fight back against the Netherlands." William IV was shocked, and then returned to normal. Britain's reaction was within his expectations, but it was not surprising and normal. This is the diplomatic means that the British have always used. Obviously, Britain has seen the Netherlands' purpose and is ready to intervene in the power competition within Belgium. William IV is very cruel. Belgium is now almost all Dutch in power. From the Prime Minister to the Speaker of the two houses, they are all Dutch, as is the Supreme Court. Down to the states, cities, and towns, they are all controlled by Dutch. In this case, even if the British threaten with artillery shells, it will be difficult to achieve their goals. Unless the British can change the current population structure of Belgium, they can make the current population structure of the Dutch in Belgium occupy more than 80%. Moreover, the 80% of the Dutch population, under the cultivation of William IV, had never rebelled against the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Even if Britain tried its best, it would be difficult to break the influence of the Netherlands there. What Britain can do now is to make the ambitions of the Netherlands known to the public and make European countries dissatisfied with the Netherlands. William IV asked, "Is that right?" Hespet Van nodded in agreement. William IV then asked, "If that's the case, what do we need to do to eliminate it?" Hespet Van, "Send more envoys from various countries to explain the Netherlands' position." William IV shook his head, "That would be too inefficient." Hespet Van, "Your Majesty, do you have a better way?" William IV nodded and said, "Of course there is a way. Few people will believe what the government says, because throughout the era, the government has been too close to capital and the nobility, and the lower classes of society have developed a sense of distrust. Therefore, it would be better for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to tell each country instead of saying it." Hespet Van. William IV further revealed the mystery and said, "What do you think? If the Dutch and Belgian society initiate a referendum, and the title is whether to choose to join the Netherlands? Do you think this public relations would be better than having your Ministry of Foreign Affairs explain it?" Hespet Van nodded vigorously and said happily, "More than 100 times." Chapter 522 Blowing the Horn from Madrid. 1869. In the Spanish Royal Palace, Madrid, Spain. Queen Isabella II, Prime Minister Ramón Narváez, Foreign Minister Tunis, Speaker of the House of Representatives Julian, Speaker of the Senate and, together with the Spanish upper class, met with the Dutch Senate President Huntington and held a grand welcoming banquet. After everyone left, they held a meeting with Huntington alone in the palace. On the one hand, it is the diplomatic means of the Netherlands, and on the other hand, the British are now in the most weak state in recent years. Everyone will take advantage of the situation. Speaker Huntington, compared with America and Northern Europe, the importance of the Far East to the British is decreasing, and it is also the weakest place for Britain. At present, the previous battlefields of Britain in North America and the Balkan Peninsula have ended in failure, which has tied up a large number of British political and military resources. Even if the British government wants to reinforce the Far East, it is unable to do so. This is not because Britain does not have enough resources or money. The actual reason is that North America has been run by the United States of America. Whether it is military or economic development, it is enough to fight against Britain. If Britain mobilizes the whole country, it can naturally win a great victory, but Europe will face threats from other countries. This is why Britain is afraid to act rashly. The Balkan Peninsula is only based on Britain's strategic position, and the purpose is to block the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire from moving south. The Ottoman Empire was wooed by Britain and became a wine cork, which was tightly blocked and completed the task arranged by the British. However, Constantinople is now in a state of disloyalty and no longer obeys British orders. All these have made Britain dare not make a big move in the future. Even if it wants to move, the delicate situation in Europe has been broken by the rise of Prussia. Britain has added a rising Prussia in addition to Russia and France. Our Dutch restlessness is also part of the reason for Britain's headache. These restrictions can almost directly declare that Britain's rule around the world has entered an unprecedented period of decline. Having said that, Huntington looked at several people and smiled encouragingly. This is Spain's opportunity. Who are Queen Isabella II, Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez, Foreign Minister Tanis, Speaker of the House of Representatives Julian, and President of the Senate Benand? They are all the most powerful politicians in Spain at present, and no one would think that their political wisdom is low. Looking at Huntington's seemingly kind smile, they naturally would not be conquered by this expression that can easily win votes. Several people secretly cursed him as an old fox. Finally, Spanish Foreign Minister Tanis stood up at the signal of Isabella II and Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez, and asked, "Is the Kingdom of the Netherlands ready to take action?" He then said shockingly, "The Netherlands supports Spain's support for the sovereignty of Gibraltar, and Spain supports the Netherlands' position of regaining sovereignty in Belgium. Before your visit, Your Excellency Speaker of the House of Representatives' actions in Spain have been vigorously publicized, but it is not surprising that the United Kingdom has reached its concerns about Your Excellency in Spain, which has triggered the diplomacy of the three countries of Britain, the Netherlands and Spain into a turbulent period. If our guess is correct, Your Excellency wants to achieve a certain goal, and it seems that the Netherlands should start talking with London, right? I wonder if my guess is right." Foreign Minister Tanis made it clear, and immediately made the others, including Queen Isabella II, look at Huntington in scrutiny. Huntington shook his head and said, "In fact, as early as last week, we sent Deputy Minister Nicholas Pearson of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs to visit London and started negotiations with the United Kingdom. Now has entered a critical moment. The Dutch cabinet government is busy with this matter from top to bottom. Queen Isabella II, Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez, Foreign Minister Tanis, Speaker of the House of Representatives Julian, and Speaker of the Senate Benand." Everyone in the room was shocked by Huntington's seemingly casual remark. Isabella I's eyes were bright and her breathing was also rapid. The Netherlands has had a close relationship with her Spain in recent years, which allowed the Spain under her leadership to successfully break away from the infiltration of France and complete itself. Originally, it was thought that Spain was already very powerful for daring to indirectly confront Britain in Gibraltar. After all, it allowed Spain to be snatched from the mouth of China by Britain, the maritime hegemony superpower. But now it is known that the Netherlands has already talked to Britain, and it went to London, England to talk. This is going to ask for it on the doorstep. Although Belgium is not under British rule, everyone knows that Queen Victoria helped her uncle to establish the country. Although her uncle Leopold I has passed away, Leopold I is also his cousin. No one thinks that Britain will give in. Moreover, Belgium's strategic position is also very critical to Britain. It can monitor the Netherlands in the north and France in the south. The Western Sea can cooperate with Britain and become a backup port for the British Navy. It is precisely because of this that when Viscount Palmerston forcefully cut off the Kingdom of Belgium from the Netherlands and established it, Europe was terrified, because it represented that Britain's intervention in the European continent has gone a step further and represented the strength of Britain. If it is taken back by the Netherlands, it means that Britain has begun to weaken 30 years after the Netherlands surrendered in 1839. Will the British agree? Will Queen Victoria admit that Britain has become weaker now than when she first inherited the throne? This also made Isabella I's face show two strange redness, showing how uneasy she was in her heart. The Netherlands has already negotiated with the UK. When will Spain start? Thinking of this, she felt a sense of urgency. Not only her, but others as well. Thinking that if they could take back Gibraltar from the UK when they were in power, it would go down in Spanish history, and in the real Spanish electoral politics, it would also gain a more consolidated vote base, and re-election with a high vote would be a piece of cake. Thinking of this, even her breathing became more rapid. Seeing their changes, Huntington said, "So, now the Netherlands is willing to implement the alliance signed with Spain. The Netherlands has taken a step forward, but it also hopes that Spain will not fall behind." My trip to Spain this time was actually commissioned by Our Great Majesty William IV and Prime Minister Thorbecke, in order to show that the two countries' positions are advancing and retreating together. Huntington said secretly. London, as expected, rejected Nicholas Pearson's request for Britain to support Belgium's return to the Netherlands. According to the plan, my visit to Spain this time is the second link of the plan, which is to mobilize Spain to publicly support Belgium's return to the Netherlands and increase the pressure on Britain. At present, persuading these people to willingly join the pro-Dutch position is my goal. As for the bottom line of the price, even if the Netherlands wants to support these people in talking to Britain, I am afraid that these people don't dare to do so at present. Don't you believe it? The UK currently has heavy troops deployed in Gibraltar, and the Mediterranean fleet often replenishes there when entering and leaving the Strait of Gibraltar. The UK should not agree to our negotiations, right? Huntington showed curiosity at the right time. Foreign Secretary Tonnes explained, Belgium is not under direct British rule after all, and the UK may not react so strongly, but Gibraltar has been ruled by Britain for more than 160 years. Britain has always attached great importance to this. If we rashly propose to Britain now, will it be too abrupt? Will it anger Britain? On the contrary, when Spain and France are currently at odds, we will completely stand on the side of France, which will be more disadvantageous to Spain. Therefore, making our position clear to the UK may not be the best option at the moment. Look, Huntington was proud of his guest just now, but regret appeared on his face. Seeing this, in the eyes of several other people, they were very proud of the fact that they had thwarted the Dutch attempt to let Spain and the Netherlands take the lead in the fight against Britain. However, they did not know that all this was in Huntington's calculations. He secretly said, "Your Majesty is indeed very accurate in judging people. These people seem to be in power, but they are timid and afraid of things. They are only trying to keep their power. They are good at defending the status quo, but they lack courage." Huntington said regretfully, "It's a pity, but Our Majesty and the Prime Minister asked me to promise everyone in Spain before I came to Madrid that as long as Spain makes a claim for the sovereignty of Gibraltar to Britain, the Netherlands will definitely become the first country to support Spain's position, and it will be the most determined country. On this point, Our Majesty repeatedly told me to convey it to you." Isabel II and several others were very moved after hearing this, and their good impression of the Netherlands suddenly rose sharply. It was in this atmosphere that Huntington got what he wanted. And the Spanish people also got the benefits they wanted from Huntington's visit, which was considered to be a win-win situation. On February 21, 1869, with global attention, the first stop of the Dutch House of Representatives, Huntington's visit to Spain was welcomed by the whole of Spain. The next day, Speaker Huntington gave 2 speeches to the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Spanish Congress. He thus became the first foreign speaker of the House of Representatives in the history of Spain to speak in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, surpassing the history that only the speakers of the French or Portuguese parliaments could speak in one of the parliaments alone. It can be seen that the relationship between the Netherlands and Spain has reached a high level. On the third day, Huntington was received by Foreign Minister Tonnes, Speaker of the House of Representatives Julian, Speaker of the Senate Anand, Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez, and Queen Isabella II. After the meeting, Speaker Huntington and the Speaker of the Spanish House of Representatives held a closed-door meeting. Finally, at the joint press conference, the two announced a piece of news in front of reporters from newspapers around the world. Huntington, the Dutch House of Representatives is currently preparing to pass a bill on Belgium. We will hold a vote in the Dutch Parliament on the premise that Belgium returns to our arms. This bill will become our goal, and we seem to be making good progress. My colleague, Speaker Julian, also agrees with our position on Belgium's sovereignty. Spanish House Speaker Julian, yes, just like the Netherlands Gibraltar complex for Spain. Chapter 523, Belgium and the Netherlands. If we ask what was the most shocking news in the 2 months before February 21, 1869? Many people would answer that it was the visit of the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington to Spain, which triggered a diplomatic dispute between Britain, the Netherlands and Spain. But what was the most shocking news to the world one day later on February 22? Everyone's first answer was still about the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington, but the reason was that the Dutch House of Representatives, which he represented, announced that he would push the Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives to pass the Belgium Bill, and ask the Senate to pass it, and Prime Minister Thorbecke and King William IV of the Netherlands to sign and implement the bill, officially recognizing Belgium as Dutch territory. And the Spanish Speaker of the House of Representatives Julian actually stood up to endorse Huntington and pointed out that the Spanish House of Representatives supported Huntington's position. This news raised a superstorm like a tornado, hitting the world, and making many people fall down. Unexpectedly, the French Empire was the first to stand up and oppose. We don't think the Netherlands has any purpose in announcing such unrealistic territorial demands at this time, but we are very dissatisfied with the Netherlands' annexation of Belgium. Don't forget that Walloon-Brabant is French in our French-speaking area, with more than 200,000 French people there. I don't think the idea of the Kingdom of the Netherlands annexing Belgium is wise. In this regard, Huntington, who was visiting Madrid, laughed when reporters mentioned the French accusations and said, "The French seem to have forgotten one thing. That is, in Belgium, the Dutch currently have more than 1.6 million people, which is 4 times the number of French people. In Belgium, and with the last time France occupied 3.5 Belgian provinces, Hainaut, Namur, Luxembourg and half of Liège was shared with Prussia. At present, in Belgium, France's own influence has declined to the point where it is difficult to compete with the Netherlands. I don't know whether the French can represent the majority of the Belgians, but I know that the Dutch can, because the Dutch represent about 80% of the total population of Belgium, which is 2 million. Everyone knows what this data represents, which means that the word majority is firmly in the hands of our fellow Dutch people." Huntington's rebuttal left Paris unable to respond. In fact, it was precisely because of the last Belgian crisis that the game between Britain, France, the Netherlands and Prussia finally maintained the royal status with the support of Britain. The Dutch and Prussian allies of the French greedily took away 3.5 Belgian provinces dominated by French. The Netherlands only took 2 in the north, namely Antwerp and Limburg. At present, the only remaining provinces in the Kingdom of Belgium are the capital Brussels, which is inhabited by mixed populations, West Flanders, East Flanders, Flemish Brabant, which are dominated by Dutch, and Walloon-Brabant, which is inhabited by French people. The latter is small in area and small in population. It was Huntington's proposal that made people who knew Belgium and those who didn't know Belgium suddenly despise and ridicule France. Many people were also amazed at the Netherlands' precise calculations. In the original Belgian population, the Dutch accounted for about 55% of the population. Therefore, as long as the Dutch were partially won over, the population advantage of the Dutch would be broken. The French did not have no chance to turn over, at least with the support of the Leopold royal family, there would be a balance. However, with a large-scale annexation of France, the balance of Belgium was actually broken by France itself. After annexing the southern territory of Belgium, its influence on Belgium has shrunk. As one rises and the other falls, the Netherlands has achieved an astonishing dominance. Look at the power structure within Belgium now. The Prime Minister, the Speaker of the Senate and the House of Representatives, the President of the Supreme Court, etc. are all of Dutch descent, and even the Prime Minister's cabinet is all of Dutch descent. What else is there to compare? In fact, what is the difference between this and a province in the Netherlands? Look at the various decrees and bills issued by Belgium in recent years. Almost all of them are following the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The birth of Belgium was achieved with the full support of France, the pusher. France took 3.5 Belgian provinces, but lost almost the entire Belgian influence, and the barrier between the North and the Netherlands was almost gone. The Netherlands, on the other hand, gained the buffer country that was close to itself. Belgium, which many people did not care about at first, was found to have become a follower of the Netherlands after some investigation. This made many people look strange. The high-profile opposition of the French Empire actually triggered a wave of interest in power in Belgium. It must be said that Speaker Huntington's high-profile influence was too great. Many people couldn't help but turn their attention to the UK, waiting for London's reaction. As they learned more, everyone knew that London was the backer of the Leopold family of the Belgian royal family. Now the Netherlands is obviously preparing to drive away the Leopold family. Will London give up? As the cousin of the current King Leopold II of Belgium, will Her Majesty Queen Victoria agree? We in the UK, like Paris, strongly oppose the ambitions of the Netherlands. We believe that the current control of Belgium is out of balance and needs to be adjusted, but this is just our opinion and does not mean that we will interfere in the internal governance of Belgium. Russell, the British Foreign Secretary, hastily expressed his position. His position is similar to what everyone guessed, that is, he opposes the Netherlands' annexation of Belgium. However, because everyone understands, the opposition of the UK did not cause much waves. However, there is a relationship of interest between Britain, France and Belgium, so it is understandable, and the position of Spain is obviously similar to the exchange of interests with the Speaker of the House Huntington, who clamored to support Gibraltar belonging to Western Spain. This is mutual support between Spain and the Netherlands. But there was one country that stood up to support the Netherlands and shocked the world. On February 24, 1869, a press conference from Berlin shocked the world. At the Prime Minister's press conference, Prime Minister Bismarck said that Prussia agreed with the Netherlands' point of view. He also believed that with the Dutch occupying the majority of the population, and with the support of the Dutch, Prussia believed that Belgium no longer had any need to exist, because it was just deceiving itself. Bismarck, I think it would be good for Belgium to return to the state before it separated from the Netherlands in 1839. Don't forget that before the Netherlands recognized it in 1839, Belgium was still a territory of the Netherlands internationally. This was a period of history not long ago. Now it seems that it is time for Belgium to return to the embrace of the Netherlands. This is a reason, but almost no one believes it. Is it true? The reason is too far-fetched, so everyone suspects that the Netherlands and Prussia have reached some kind of agreement. Chapter 524, London Negotiations. Because the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives Huntington announced in Madrid, Spain, that the Dutch House of Representatives would promote Dutch legislation to strengthen the rule of Belgium and urge Belgium to return to the embrace of the Netherlands, Britain refuted it, but on the 23rd, it was publicly supported by Bismarck of Prussia. Suddenly, the opposition of Britain and France and the support of Prussia and Spain became the focus of the world. On February 24, 1869, Queen Victoria of the British Empire expressed concern about the Dutch House of Representatives' intention to get involved in Belgium, but she expected that the tension between Britain and the Netherlands would not escalate further because of the House of Representatives Huntington. Queen Victoria made the above statement in an open interview with a British newspaper before going to Edinburgh to inspect the completion of local primary education. At this time, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives Huntington announced the Dutch House of Representatives are Belgium Bill during his visit to Madrid, the capital of Spain, the day before. On February 20, 1869, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, Huntington, visited Spain under a severe warning from Britain. In response, Britain has been confronting Dutch and Spanish naval warships in northern Spain since the 20th. Britain has even carried out military training in the Mediterranean. This is the first time in history that Britain has launched a two-sided naval oppression against both coasts of Spain. Queen Victoria, who had never appeared or was unwilling to comment directly on Huntington's defense of Spain, said to the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, Huntington, regarding Belgium, I am not worried, but I am concerned that the Dutch government and His Majesty William IV actually let the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives intervene in the foreign policy of the Netherlands. I don't think the Dutch government and the royal family will allow the House of Representatives to do more than it has now. Huntington is the first visit of the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives to Spain, and Huntington's remarks against Britain before the trip made this trip a focus of attention. London regarded Huntington's trip to Spain as a great provocation and took a series of retaliatory actions, including Britain calling off the two countries' cooperation in the Far East to oppose France's invasion of the Kingdom of Siam and supporting the Kingdom of Siam's weapons corridor plan. With Queen Victoria's statement, Huntington's visit to Spain further strained the already tense relationship between Britain and the Netherlands due to the Anglo-Dutch relationship in North America. When asked whether he considered Huntington's visit to Spain a mistake, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke refused to criticize it. He only gave an ambiguous answer: it was his decision. At the same time, in London, England, at the scene of the Anglo-Dutch diplomatic negotiations, the Dutch Deputy Foreign Minister, on behalf of the Dutch Foreign Minister, Hespert van, was conducting intense negotiations with the British Foreign Secretary Russell. The great Lord Palmerston of the British Empire supported the separatists in Belgium in 1830, causing many people in Belgium to be emotionally dissatisfied with the Netherlands. He then sent British warships to force the Dutch government to swallow the bitter fruit of losing Belgium. I don't think the Netherlands gave up its rule over Belgium voluntarily, but was forced to do so. To this day, the Dutch still feel resentful about this. I think Russell, as the former British Prime Minister and current Foreign Secretary, was the best partner of Lord Palmerston in the past. Doesn't he feel it's wrong to bring up the Netherlands' ambitions for Belgium at this time? Or has more than 30 years passed, and the respected Lord Russell voluntarily forgotten this matter because of this negotiation? Without a Dutch deputy foreign minister, Russell stared at the 34-year-old Nicholas Pearson in front of him, as if he saw the Viscount Palmerston he had just met. In the blink of an eye, things have changed. Viscount Palmerston has left the public, and he still needs to face the provocation of the powerful Netherlands against Britain. Now, they are directly negotiating in London with Belgium, which was Palmerston's proud masterpiece. This made Russell feel that there was something wrong with Britain, otherwise why would such a provocation happen? Nicholas Pearson, who is opposite him, had colourful eyes. Since 1830, the best political combination of the Whig Party in Britain was Viscount Palmerston and Russell. One became the Prime Minister and the other was the Foreign Minister. The two took turns to change positions in these two positions. Now the strong Palmerston, the iron-fisted figure who suppressed the whole of Europe, has passed away, and Russell is already old. As a successor, Clayton seems to be no match for the Tory Disraeli. And he has known for many years that there are contradictions between the Tory party and Queen Victoria of the royal family. In this case, his trip to London seemed to be difficult to persuade Britain to accept the Netherlands' position of Belgium returning to the Netherlands. At this moment, there is some progress. Russell, yes, the Netherlands used to be the owner of Belgium, but don't forget that before 1815, the Kingdom of the Netherlands did not own Belgium. It was only when Britain and the Russian Empire established the Vienna system that they supported the Netherlands to re-establish and form the United Kingdom with Belgium and Luxembourg. From 1815 to 1839, the Dutch rule over Belgium was only 24 years. Russell sarcastically said, "Your Excellency, as the Deputy Foreign Minister of the Netherlands, you actually want to tell me that Belgium belongs to the Netherlands in history, but not the period when Belgium is not the Netherlands. Are you bullying me because I am not familiar with history?" Nicholas Pearson paused at first, then looked at Russell's half-smile and said with a serious face, "But according to what Sir Russell said, it seems that South Africa belonged to the Netherlands at that time, but it was because Belgium was supported by the British Empire behind you that the Netherlands reached an agreement to transfer Cape Town and the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa to Britain." He further pointed out, "If you have doubts about history classes, you can continue to study the reasons for the conflict between our two countries, which may help resolve the conflict between the two countries. In order to restore the country as soon as possible, the three countries of Britain, Russia and Austria, referring to Austria-Hungary, put pressure on William I, the leader of the Nassau family of the Dutch royal family. The Nassau family of the Netherlands was afraid that the British would not support it, and was also afraid that Tsarist Russia would give up, so they finally agreed to Britain's request for South Africa. It is for this reason that South Africa, which was a colony of the Netherlands in history, became a colony of Britain. However, when everyone in the Netherlands was relieved for losing South Africa, which was very important in strategic position, and gaining Belgium next to the mainland, they did not expect that Belgium was eventually torn away from the Netherlands by the British design. The whole Netherlands was in great pain, and His Majesty William I even proposed to retire and gave the throne to his son William I in 1840. Not long after that, he died of depression. This matter became a knot in the hearts of everyone in the Netherlands. Nicholas Pearson saw the astonishment on Russell's face and immediately said, "The Netherlands exchanged South Africa for the British Empire, but Belgium has become a protectorate of the United Kingdom now. This has caused a sharp drop in the image of the United Kingdom. I don't think this is a good thing for the United Kingdom." Russell. Nicholas Pearson further said, "The global reputation of the British Empire will be damaged as a result. A person cannot stand without credibility. I don't think it is a good thing for the United Kingdom to mess up its own reputation. Now is the time for the United Kingdom to return to the track of maintaining its damaged reputation." Seeing that it was useless to make up stories, and the young opponent in front of him seemed to be more energetic and could make up stories more than him, This made him sigh and admit the fact that he was old. So he decisively changed the subject and said, "But these are not enough for Britain to recognize that Belgium belongs to the Dutch rule. Perhaps you don't know that our Queen Victoria has asked the British government to protect the royal status of the Leopold family yesterday and to ensure that the Kingdom of Belgium cannot disappear on the European continent. On this point, the British government has reached an unprecedented consensus." Russell said with an extremely firm face, "Therefore, it is difficult for us to agree with the Netherlands' idea of annexing Belgium." Prussia. Crown Prince Frederick, Britain should oppose the Netherlands' annexation of Belgium. After all, Britain has always regarded Belgium as an enclave for monitoring the French and Dutch coasts, and it is also one of the few transit ports for Britain on the European continent. No matter how you look at it, Britain will not agree. William I heard this and agreed with it. However, is William IV of the Netherlands doing useless work? He didn't believe it. So he couldn't help but turn his attention to Bismarck. Moltke was also. Bismarck said quietly, "The Crown Prince's idea is good, but we can think of it." I don't think those people in the Netherlands will not be unaware of it. In this case, Huntington broke the news at this time, which proves that the Netherlands will not release this shocking news for no reason. Therefore, everyone wait and see. It will be more exciting later. Perhaps unexpected twists and turns will appear. Anyway, we have publicly supported the Netherlands. We have done what we should do and have done. The deal is completed. The rest is the Netherlands' own business. Hearing this, several people nodded in agreement. In the Netherlands, William IV, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke and Foreign Minister Huspert van are rehearsing the negotiations in London. Queen Victoria will definitely not give up Belgium. After all, Leopold I was supposed to be the husband of the British princess. But after the former's death, Leopold I finally introduced his widowed sister to the former King of England, and finally pushed his niece Queen Victoria to the position of Queen of England. Therefore, for Queen Victoria, Leopold I is not only her only uncle, but also her best political ally and foreign aid. Although Leopold I has passed away, Queen Victoria will definitely stick to these incense and grace. This is beneficial to her feelings and her credibility and reputation in governing the country. Thorbecke, who is already 71 years old, said, "So we must be prepared for Britain's firm opposition." Foreign Minister Huspert van also agreed, "We have also assessed that Britain will not be willing to lose Belgium." After that, the two couldn't help but look at William IV. William IV said confidently, "Even you think so? Then it seems that Nicholas Pearson's conditions may make Britain loosen up." Thorbecke and Huspert van. Chapter 525 The King and Prime Minister of Paris. February 25, 1869. Two major delegations of the Dutch diplomatic mission attracted attention at home and abroad. The Dutch people had already read the purpose of the two delegations' visits in the newspapers, so they were talking about it. One was the Speaker of the House of Representatives Huntington, who was visiting Madrid, Spain, and the other was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs staff led by the Dutch Deputy Foreign Minister Nicholas Pearson, who visited London, England to negotiate on the status of Belgium. Our great Dutch government is so smart. When the former visited Spain, I thought for some reason they went to Madrid to provoke them. Now I find out that everything was to cooperate with the latter to put pressure on London. It's great. The Dutch diplomatic team visited London for the ongoing negotiations. I think it has increased our conditions in disguise. Britain has now felt the pressure from the Netherlands. That's good, but I am more interested in why Prussia would stand up and support our sovereignty claims for Belgium at this time. You know, Prussia had a life and death struggle with us in North America before, but now it supports us in the Netherlands, and it was said by Bismarck, the Prussian Prime Minister himself. The weight and credibility of this are unquestionable. I think so too. Prussia's attitude is too weird and unpredictable. I think it's not just us civilians who don't know. In addition to the people involved in the Prussian and Dutch governments, Britain, France and other countries must also be confused. But in any case, Prussia's support will definitely make Britain and France more cautious in their attitudes, and this is definitely beneficial to our Dutch negotiation team in London. I agree with this point of view, but I would like to point out that what is the deal between Prussia and the Netherlands? I believe no one will think that Prussia is showing goodwill for no reason. I believe that the people of Prussia are also very confused. But let's not talk about this for now. What I am worried about is what we have to pay to be able to invite Bismarck to stand on the platform. Yes, Bismarck has never done anything without benefits. The conditions given by the Netherlands must be tempting, Otherwise Bismarck would not have come out to support it in the first place. At present, Britain and France should be trying to understand the inside story, so I don't think Britain will make too big a move. Anyway, Belgium is a piece of meat that Britain dug out of the Netherlands. This made the entire kingdom of the Netherlands very painful. Therefore, no matter what the government does, I think we should support it. I think so too, but at present, what we need to pay most attention to is the reaction of London and what Deputy Foreign Minister Nicholas Pearson, who is negotiating there, has won for the Netherlands. Nicholas Pearson is the new diplomatic ace of the Netherlands. His rise as ambassador to Prussia made him a household name in the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His ability is also recognized by everyone. Therefore, the government sent him this time. I think we should wait and see. The result will be very good. In Paris, France, Napoleon III walked around the palace in a somewhat restless manner, while Prime Minister Olivier beside him also showed an uneasy look. Tell me, at this time, the Netherlands actually raised the issue of Belgium's ownership. Knowing that Britain would oppose it, they still dared to do so. Is there some conspiracy? Napoleon III said in fear. When Britain and the Netherlands competed over the issue of South Africa, Britain suffered countless casualties, but in the end, they quickly reached an Anglo-Dutch deal. In order to preserve the Boers from the Netherlands, Britain sold the Australian continent at a low price. In the end, both countries had to step down and the other expanded its territory. Now, after 7 years, the Netherlands has begun to coerce Britain again. Yes, I have to say that I have begun to admire William IV in my heart. He has repeatedly put pressure on Britain and succeeded. This is the case with South Africa and the North American issue. It seems that William IV can always grasp Britain's pain points, making Britain choose to make concessions every time to achieve the purpose of the Netherlands. Look at us, a small kingdom of Siam, an indigenous country in the East, which has made us work so hard that we have almost exhausted the power of the French Empire, but we still cannot occupy 1/3 of the country's territory. This is almost a loss of face. Olivier smiled bitterly when he heard this. But he did not interrupt Napoleon II's complaint. Napoleon III did not seem to have the idea of stopping complaining. Look at the Netherlands, they have won hands again and again, and it's so easy. I feel that the French Empire is the second most powerful country in the world, or the Netherlands. What do you think, my Prime Minister? Feeling the stinging eyes of Napoleon III, Olivier showed panic on his face and said hesitantly, Your Majesty, the Netherlands has used its strength that is not scrupled by others to become a tolerated existence by all parties. The Netherlands has a small land area, so Britain, France, Prussia and other countries have never felt threatened. Therefore, this is the reason why the Netherlands has grown under the checks and balances of the three countries. This is why France has difficulty doing some things. His subtext is that it is not that we don't want to do it, but that France is too big and too strong. Britain and Prussia are wary of us, which allows the Netherlands to find opportunities to develop itself. So don't blame us for not being able to do what the Netherlands did. If you really want to blame someone, blame France for being too strong. Hearing this, Napoleon II's face softened slightly. He seemed to agree with what Olivier said. Yes, France was too powerful. He comforted himself. If you want to blame someone, blame France for being too powerful. Even after the failure of the Napoleonic Wars, France still developed into the second most powerful country in Europe after Britain, under the suppression of the four countries of the Holy Alliance. How could such a France not make Britain, Prussia and Austria-Hungary afraid? Could it be that big countries are afraid of the small country of the Netherlands? Thinking of this, the anger in Napoleon II's heart dissipated immediately. This made Olivier, who is like a tiger accompanying the emperor, breathe a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, it's a close call. I passed another level. Napoleon III, recently, France's diplomacy has been getting worse and worse. We need to improve it. Look at the Netherlands. It has established one organization after another. Almost all countries in the international community have been ensnared by it. If this continues, we will always be alone. This is what we should learn. Olivier said quickly, Your Majesty, we are already preparing and organizing, but there are still some more specific investigations that need to be carried out. After that, we can establish an international organization. Is it reliable? Napoleon III asked doubtfully. Olivier, I am confident. Napoleon III smiled at this and was about to speak, but his chief guard knocked on the door and came in. He said solemnly, Urgent news from London. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.